arguably the most famous paranormal investigators of the 20th century. Before their deaths, Ed and Lorraine Warren were involved in some of the most high-profile cases of demonic activity ever recorded. I mean, they literally made a multifaceted movie franchise based off them. And just as famous as the Warrens themselves was their acclaimed occult museum filled with haunted, demonic, and cursed objects in every corner. Starting us off at number 10, the toy monkey. So it goes without saying that almost everything that is a notable part of the Conjuring series is also a real artifact that the Warrens found along the way. One of these such artifacts, who made an appearance in both The Conjuring and the spin-off Annabelle Comes Home, is the toy monkey. However, if it wasn't already obvious, it's not something to be played with. As Ed tells the reporters in the Conjuring movie, everything you see here is either haunted, cursed, or been used in some kind of ritualistic practice. Nothing is a toy. Not even the toy monkey. So what exactly makes this monkey so scary in real life? Well, allegedly, it is possessed by a terrifying demon who enjoys stalking its victims before eventually killing them. So yeah, not a very nice monkey it seems. Although, nothing you'll find in this museum is terribly friendly. Coming in at number 9, a vampire coffin. As far as creepy looking things go, I have to say this is not one of the scariest looking on the list, but of course, things are not always what they appear. This coffin found at the Warrens Museum is not just called the vampire coffin because of the slightly goofy looking Count Dracula face on the top, but because it was allegedly actually used by a modern day vampire. Now, I'm not saying that this is fictional, but I will say that the details surrounding this are rather few. There is no file stating how modern this modern vampire was, or how it came to be in their possession, but I mean, it's definitely very intriguing. My only question is, where is this so-called vampire now? Was it killed, or is it roaming free? Should we be nervous that a bloodthirsty monster could be on the loose, or was it more of a Twilight vampire situation? I guess we will never know. Coming in at number 8, the famous music box. If you have seen The Conjuring, which by the way, if you haven't, you really should, then you will definitely recognize this next item here. In the film version of the story, the youngest child of the family, April, finds an antique music box in the house and uses it to communicate with the spirit of a young boy named Rory, who was supposedly killed by his mother, Bathsheba, in the 1800s. Now, of course, there are definitely larger things at play throughout the film, but at the end of it, viewers see Ed place the haunted music box inside of the room of artifacts, where it suddenly opens and begins to play its tinny music. Now, in real life, it didn't quite happen like that, but the real music box is safely tucked away in the Warrens Museum. However, legend has it that while it really does contain an evil spirit, it was not properly contained, and so some believe the demon could escape at any moment. Coming in at number 7, tombstones. When it comes to items involved in a satanic ritual, I am sure that the Warrens managed to corner that market. I mean, are there other haunted museums? Absolutely, but theirs is really the one that started it all. One of these allegedly satanically involved items you can find hiding about are a series of tombstones that the Warrens claim were used in a dark occult ritual by those who work on the darker side of the paranormal. However, what makes these tombstones especially creepy is that they reportedly belong to rather young people. And so the Warrens had reason to believe that the young people were not only used as a sacrifice, but then their tombstones were used to finalize the ritual. So, you know, just all around very dark and evil stuff. Coming in at number 6, a brick. It's not all Hollywood-based sensations inside the museum. In fact, one of their most prized and feared possessions looks about as plain as you could imagine. It's a brick. Like, from a house. But of course, this is no ordinary brick. It's in an occult museum after all. This brick in particular was from the Borley Rectory, a now famous building that was demolished in 1944 after it was badly damaged in a fire. But what made it such a sensation was that prior to the 1939 fire, it had long been rumored to be the most haunted building in all of the United Kingdom, which is a pretty tall order considering how many allegedly haunted buildings span across the UK. Allegedly, the night of the fire, there were over 2,000 reports of paranormal activity, including floating bricks thought to have been possessed by a poltergeist. So, if rumors are true, that would make this brick probably the most terrifying brick ever. Which, I mean, I don't know how much competition it really has there, but still, it's a demonic brick. It's terrifying no matter what.
In the deep Belizean jungle at a Maya site called Luminai, archaeologists started finding copper tools, stuff like bells, tweezers, fish hooks, which is already strange, considering the Maya weren't big on metalwork, and finding them this far inland was especially weird. Most of the copper wasn't local. Instead, it was traced back to places hundreds of miles away, mainly in western and central Mexico. This proves that the ancient Maya were part of a huge trade network. The copper items were clearly considered rare, valuable, used for rituals and trade, and they totally mess with the old idea that the Maya didn't care about metal until the Spanish showed up. Also goes to show just how connected these societies were. As one researcher, Geoffrey Braswell, put it, the finds show how, quote, Mesoamerican societies were much more interconnected than we previously believed. It's not just that the tools are interesting, it's how they got there. These were jungle cities with no wheels, no horses, nothing like that, but they still managed to trade for copper from hundreds of miles away. This one kinda looks like nothing, I mean just an old bone at first glance, but the Ashango bone, found near the headwaters of the Nile close to the Congo jungle, is over 20,000 years old. It might be the oldest known math tool. It's a small bone, probably from a baboon, with carved notches grouped into patterns. Scientists noticed some of the marks seem to show multiplication, division, prime numbers. One column shows numbers like 11, 13, 17, and 19, which is not random. Dirk Hoylebroek, a Belgian mathematician who studied it, wrote, "The structure of the markings is clearly purposeful. This is evidence of a prehistoric number sense," end quote. Now, not everyone agrees on what the bone was used for. Some think it was a lunar calendar. Others say a tally stick, but either way, it's way more advanced than anyone expected for that time. It was found in 1960 near the Semliki River in modern-day Democratic Republic of the Congo, and is now housed in a museum in Brussels. Alright, so this one is controversial. The Ica stones are a bunch of smooth black rocks with carvings on them, found near Ica, Peru. Some show normal stuff like animals, but others show people using telescopes, doing surgery, and interacting with dinosaurs. A farmer named Basilio Uchuya claimed he found them in a cave in the 60s. He admitted to faking some of them, but then he said he was forced to say that to avoid prison for selling antiques. So the whole thing's a mess. Most experts say the stones are modern fakes, especially since no one's ever found them in a properly documented dig. The Peruvian government officially labeled them as hoaxes, but for some reason they still keep popping up in museums and conspiracy videos. And you know, hey, I'm one to talk, but I find these things kind of compelling. Are they definitive proof that history was very different than mainstream science would have you believe? No. Are they weird enough to get my attention though? Absolutely. For years, scientists thought the Amazon was mostly just uncharted wilderness, but when deforestation and LiDAR scans started peeling back the trees, they showed hundreds of huge geometric shapes carved into the land. Circles, squares, straight roads, way too precise to be natural. A 2022 study in Science described over 450 of these geoglyphs in the Acre region of Brazil. They're estimated to be up to 2,000 years old. The shapes were made by clearing forest and digging deep ditches. Not easy work without modern equipment. And what makes it even more interesting is that there are no large ruins nearby like pyramids or cities. These things were just out in the middle of nowhere. In 2021, archaeologists digging at Xingshui, an ancient ruin site in southern China, pulled a massive gold mask out of a sacrificial pit. This place has been turning up weird stuff for decades, but this mask got a lot of attention. It's over 3,000 years old, has big staring eyes, huge ears, and a thin little mouth carved into it. It weighs about half a pound. It doesn't match the usual style of Chinese artifacts from that time though. It's not from the Shang dynasty or any of the big name cultures you usually hear about. It came from the Shu civilization, a lost culture that we still know very little about. No one really knows why they buried all this stuff in deep pits or why their art looks so different from everything else around it. Back in 1961, a group of rock collectors in Oceanic, California found something weird. They cracked open what looked like a geode, a natural rock formation that usually takes thousands or even millions of years to form, but inside they found what looked like a metal cylinder with a coil and a ceramic piece. So people were pretty blown away by this. Some claimed it was an ancient electrical component, maybe proof of lost technology. Others said the rock around it had to be hundreds of thousands of years old. Well, it turns out, once it was inspected more closely, it wasn't ancient. The object was actually a 1920s era Champion spark plug, the kind used in early cars and tractors. The rock wasn't really a geode either. It was a chunk of hardened clay and mineral buildup, which can form around stuff way faster than you'd think under very specific conditions. That didn't stop people from calling it a fossilized machine part, or the Koso artifact as it's come to be known, really running with the idea that it proved time travel, aliens, or some sort of secret civilization once existed. There's a temple in Abydos, Egypt, where the walls have some carvings that at first glance look suspiciously modern, or even futuristic. Some swear you can make out what looks like a helicopter, a tank, what looks like a submarine maybe. These aren't faint outlines, they're surprisingly detailed. So naturally these carvings have been brought up for decades when it comes to ancient alien conspiracies. Proof that Egyptians saw flying machines, time travel, long-lost technology. Well, I'd really like to believe all that stuff, but this explanation is more likely, less dramatic, but interesting all the same. Ancient Egyptian temples would get reused and recarved over time. So new pharaohs would come in, they'd want their own stories on the wall, so they would plaster over the old stuff and carve their own. And over time, the plaster wears off, and now you've got two sets of carvings overlapping each other, creating weird mashups that end up looking like helicopters or spaceships. Deep in the Colombian Amazon, inside the Sariana de la Lendosa cave system, there are cave paintings that go back over 12,000 years, and some of them are pretty weird. Some of the figures look like animals, some look like humans, and some are these strange in-between things. They've got human legs with animal heads or bodies with limbs that seem too long or distorted. They're called therianthropes, half human, half animal beings, and they're scattered all across the wall. Some think they look extraterrestrial, at the very least otherworldly, but archaeologists think they're mythological, not depictions of space aliens. I guess they'd be animorphs. Or animorphs? They're aliens from space, right? And they could be like half human, half animal? Anyway, maybe they're shamans in animal masks or spiritual beings. It's also possible they were drawn while under the influence of some hallucinogenic plants, which some tribes still use in rituals to this day. The paintings are massive in scale, too, stretching across cliff faces, and the level of detail is nuts considering how old they are. Back in the 1930s, someone found a weird-looking rock near a creek in London, Texas. When they broke it open, there was a small hammer sealed inside. The head was made of iron, and the handle looked like it had started turning to stone. The rock around it looked ancient, which made some people think the hammer itself had to be millions of years old. That's what kicked off all the mystery. Some people claim this was proof of lost technology, that humans existed way earlier than we thought and were already making tools. Carl Bau, a creationist, claimed it came from before the biblical flood, but scientists and skeptics think there's a much simpler explanation here, that the hammer looks just like the ones used in the late 1800s for mining, and the rock around it is probably just a concretion, a natural process where minerals and water slowly build up around an object. It doesn't take millions of years. It can happen in decades, again, under the right conditions. Still, it's one of those finds people keep bringing up in conversations about ancient civilizations, time travel, and out-of-place artifacts, including me. The Canaanite shipwreck. Just back in June of 2024, in the deep waters off the coast of Israel, researchers found a shipwreck unlike anything they'd ever seen before. It's from the late Bronze Age, dating back more than 3,300 years. That alone is rare, but what makes this discovery even more unusual is where it was found, nearly a mile beneath the surface, resting upright on the seafloor like it never even tipped. The ship still carried its cargo, hundreds of clay jars, sealed tight, possibly with oil or wine. There were no bones, there was no signs of a fire, just this vessel from another time, perfectly preserved in the cold dark. It's believed to be the oldest deep-sea shipwreck ever found, and the fact that it was out in open water, not close to shore, means that these ancient Canaanites may have been long-distance seafarers, something history hadn't confirmed until now. The site feels untouched, almost too untouched. For how long this ship's been sitting down there, it's in pretty good condition. Just this wooden ghost alone in the black depths of the water. Not far off Italy's western coast, under the blue waters of the Tyrrhenian Sea, sits the ruins of what appears to be a Nabatean temple. It shouldn't be there. The Nabateans, known for building Petra in present-day Jordan, were desert people. Traders, yes, but builders of temples in Italy? That wasn't part of the story until this discovery in 2023. At first, researchers thought it might be Roman. After all, there are plenty of Roman ruins along the coast, but when they took a closer look at the architecture, they realized it didn't match the Roman style at all. In fact, some inscriptions pointed east, back toward the Nabateans' homeland. The remnants of this place looked a lot like one of their temples. It was just sitting in the wrong place. There had been local legends of a drowned shrine off the coast, but no one knew exactly what it was. Some think it could have been sunk by an earthquake, which isn't usual in this area, but there's no record of the temple anywhere. It's not in any Roman texts, there's no mention of it in any ancient accounts, it was lost to history. The biggest question of all, though, is why did the Nabateans build a temple this far from home? Back in 2020, off Australia's northwest coast, archaeologists found something unexpected beneath the ocean. In places that are now completely submerged, they discovered ancient Aboriginal stone tools, hearths, and signs of long-lost camps. These sites are at least 8,500 years old, maybe even older. That means people once lived here, cooked their food here, made tools here, on land that hasn't been dry since the last ice age. Sea levels rose slowly, swallowing the coastline bit by bit. The people moved inland, but the sites they left behind stayed where they were, preserved under layers of salt water and silt. The tools are simple: stone blades, flakes, a grinding platform, but they're unmistakably human. Aboriginal groups have stories that go way back about rising waters, and now we've got the evidence to back that up. These aren't just old artifacts, they're part of a bigger story, one that's been passed down for generations. There's probably way more out there too, other ancient sites just waiting to be discovered. Every new find adds another layer to the history of people who knew this land and the sea way better than we ever realized. On the island of Abaco in the Bahamas, there's a deep circular pool known as Sawmill Sink. It looks calm from above, but under the surface, it drops into complete darkness. Divers exploring it have found the remains of animals that no longer exist. Giant tortoises, an extinct species of crocodile, and birds that haven't flown for thousands of years. Some of the bones still have soft tissue on them too. That's how untouched this place is. But it's not just animals. In 2004, divers found the nearly complete skeleton of a young woman. She lived over 1,000 years ago. Her body had sunk into the sinkhole and was preserved almost perfectly, sealed in the still, oxygen-poor water. Her bones told stories about her diet, her life, her people. She's one of the oldest intact human remains found in the Caribbean. Just north of Dublin, along Portmarnock Beach, the ocean's been giving up some secrets, literally. After a big storm in 2024, locals noticed something strange poking out of the sand. At first glance, it looked like old driftwood, but no, this was a shipwreck. Not just a piece of it either, pretty much the whole thing, at least the shape of it anyway, which had been buried for who knows how long. Turns out, this wasn't the first time the beach had coughed up pieces of a ship, but this time, it got the attention of Ireland's National Monuments Service, and they came out to investigate. They already knew about that particular wreck from a few years ago, but while they were out there, they also found 3 more shipwrecks hidden just beneath the sand. These wrecks are believed to be from the 1800s, maybe even older. They're made from thick wooden beams held together with old school iron bolts, and even though the wood's rotted and soaked in salt, the craftsmanship still holds up. This stretch of coast is actually a bit of a ship graveyard. Around 50 wrecks have been recorded in the area, from centuries-old trading ships to coal boats. Most of them were just unlucky, caught in bad weather with no one around to help and no one left to tell the story. And because of shifting sands and powerful tides, these wrecks come and go. Sometimes they're visible, sometimes the beach just swallows them right back up.
Hidden deep within a museum's forbidden archives lies an artifact straight from your darkest childhood fears. A tiny, grotesque mummy known ominously as the Pixie specimen. Recovered by a private collector known as Alex CF, this bizarre creature has sparked unsettling debates about its origins. With its shrunken, shriveled body, disturbingly lifelike features, and remnants of fiery red hair, it appears horrifyingly genuine. Some speculate it was crafted as a macabre Victorian curiosity, while others believe it to be physical evidence of mythological beings like fairies or pixies secretly studied by occult societies. Locked away and rarely mentioned publicly, the Pixie specimen remains shrouded in secrecy, its unsettling presence haunting museum curators brave enough to enter the back room alone. Hidden in a dark museum storeroom lies an artifact so terrifying it feels plucked straight from sailor legends, known as the Fiji mermaid. Originally displayed in sideshows during the 19th century, this particular specimen is among the most unnerving ever discovered. Combining the dried upper torso of a monkey with the scaly body of a fish, its grotesque, glassy-eyed stare has sparked rumors of dark rituals, curses, and sightings of real aquatic humanoids. Sailors once believed owning a Fiji mermaid brought storms, shipwrecks, and madness, making museums hesitant to place them openly on display. Locked away, carefully hidden from public view, this creature now sits silently, fueling chilling whispers about what else the seas and secret museum storerooms might be hiding. Locked away in a museum's hidden chambers lies a chilling reminder of humanity's ancient past, the shockingly preserved body of the Tulland Man. Discovered buried deep in a Danish peat bog, this 2,400-year-old Iron Age sacrifice victim looks disturbingly fresh, as if frozen in eternal sleep. Thanks to the bog's unique chemistry, scientists were not only able to determine exactly what his final meal was, but they could even lift his fingerprints after thousands of years. The rope still tightened around his neck suggests a grim, ritualistic end, fueling unsettling stories about ancient curses or vengeful spirits connected to his death. Museums carefully restrict access to him, afraid not just of damaging this priceless artifact, but perhaps wary of something darker lingering around the Tulland Man's eternal resting place. Buried deep inside the vault of an undisclosed museum lies a chilling artifact you'd hope never to encounter, a bizarre, two-headed, bat-like creature preserved with disturbingly lifelike realism. Known simply as the dual-headed bat, this twisted specimen was first rumored to be discovered hidden within an old Victorian mansion, stashed away inside a locked chest marked with strange, illegible symbols. Its grotesque appearance, featuring sharp teeth, elongated limbs, and unsettlingly expressive faces, immediately sparked rumors of occult practices and dark alchemical experiments from the past. Curators remain tight-lipped about its true origins, perhaps fearing that its mysterious presence brings with it sinister energies best left undisturbed. Hidden in the deepest archives of a museum's forbidden collection rests an object so chilling, many believe it holds a genuine demonic presence: the horned demon mummy. Sealed carefully in a velvet-lined wooden box, this tiny skeletal figure with sharp horns, pointed ears, and grotesque fur-covered legs immediately conjures images of dark rituals and forbidden occult ceremonies. Rumored to have originated from an 18th century occultist who claimed to have summoned creatures from the infernal realms, this artifact was quietly donated to the museum under very mysterious circumstances, accompanied by warnings never to open its enclosure after midnight. Museum employees whisper tales of strange noises and unexplained shadows around its location, leading to it being carefully locked away, far from curious eyes that might accidentally awaken something best left sleeping. Hidden deep within a museum's secret storeroom sits Sydney Knows, an antique fortune-telling machine with a reputation darker than its cheerful, painted smile would suggest. Originally popular in the early 20th century arcades, visitors would insert a penny and eagerly await Sydney's predictions printed on small cards. But soon, unsettling stories emerged. Sydney's predictions often came disturbingly true, frequently foretelling accidents, illnesses, or tragedy. Some visitors claimed the doll's eyes would follow them, and whispers circulated of late-night workers hearing laughter or seeing Sydney operate without being activated. Frightened by the growing legend, museum staff quietly removed the machine from display, locking it securely away, though some still wonder if Sydney already knows exactly what awaits those who disturb him again. In a dimly lit museum archive sits one of the most unsettling children's books ever created, a pop-up book titled Medical Oddities, Nature's Anomalies and Carnival Gaffes. While pop-up books usually enchant children with playful characters, this particular volume does exactly the opposite. It is definitely not a children's book. Within its pages lurks a disturbingly realistic, mummified human face, accompanied by eerie photographs and unsettling descriptions of sideshow performers and bizarre anatomical specimens. Originally created as a macabre curiosity from the Neville Colmore collection, the book quickly gained notoriety when rumors began to surface about it causing nightmares, insomnia, and unexplained illnesses among those who dared to read it. Museum curators quietly pulled it from public display, locking it securely away, wary of the strange aura and the unsettling feeling that some pages are better left unopened.
In 2012, divers working off the coast near the Croatian island of Ilovik found what turned out to be a part of a Roman cavalry helmet, submerged and buried in sand for centuries. It was found in a relatively shallow patch of sea not far from where other Roman-era items had washed up. This particular helmet fragment, heavily corroded but still identifiable, wasn't part of some grand archaeological dig. It was actually found by a recreational diver who later turned it over to authorities. What makes this interesting is the context. The area was part of a Roman naval route. Ilovik sits in the Adriatic, not far from ancient Roman settlements along the Dalmatian coast. This helmet, likely dating back to the 1st or 2nd century, may have belonged to a Roman soldier who went down with his ship, or it was lost during transport. Unlike the overhyped treasures of the deep, this artifact is simple, just a piece of someone's life, someone who probably didn't think, or at least want to think, that they'd end up at the bottom of the sea. In 2007, a team of researchers scanning Lake Michigan's floor made a strange discovery. They weren't really looking for anything, they were just mapping out the lake bed, but then they saw it. This circle of stones, arranged deliberately, sitting 40 feet underwater. It looked like something out of Europe, something old. One of the stones even had what appeared to be a mastodon carved into it. The site hasn't been explored much since then, which is surprising. The waters are pretty murky, though, which makes it more challenging. Skeptics were pretty quick to dismiss this, saying it was just rocks that settled naturally, but the pattern, the symmetry, and the fact that one of the stones has an ancient mastodon carved into it, yeah, it definitely seems like there's more to this site than just a series of rocks. If it really is ancient, older than Stonehenge, it would change what we know about prehistoric people in North America. It would mean someone was building monuments here before written history, before cities, before anything we recognize. Off the western coast of Cuba, in waters over 2,000 feet deep, sonar scans revealed something that shouldn't be there. Massive symmetrical structures, straight lines, right angles, pyramids, or what really look like pyramids. It was first discovered in the early 2000s by a Canadian research team. They were expecting to find shipwrecks. Instead, they found what some would call an underwater city. The layout seems to suggest streets and plazas and buildings spread out over several square miles, but here's the problem. The site is so deep that if it really is man-made, it would have been at least 10,000 years old. That's before any known advanced civilization, before Egypt, before Sumer, even before the supposed rise of organized society as we know it. Some scientists are pretty skeptical, saying it's just a natural rock formations, but the shapes are unusually geometric, too clean, and there's no clear geological explanation for how they ended up arranged like that. The site hasn't been fully explored. Deep sea dives are expensive, and the Cuban government hasn't prioritized any further investigation here, so whatever's down there is just sitting and waiting. Just off the coast of southern Greece lies the ruins of Pavlopetria, a city that's now entirely underwater. You can still see the streets, the building foundations and tombs, all laid out clearly on the seafloor. It's over 5,000 years old, one of the oldest submerged cities ever found. Pavlopetria wasn't destroyed by war or fire, it just sank slowly, piece by piece, after a series of earthquakes and rising sea levels. What's left is incredibly well preserved. No one ever built over it. No scavengers took the stone. It's just there, untouched under the waves. Divers have mapped out more than 15 buildings here. Some still have dividing walls, some even had plumbing. People lived their entire lives here, close to the sea that eventually claimed it. Pavlopetria matches descriptions from ancient texts about cities swallowed by water. Some even link it loosely to the Atlantis myth. That's a stretch, sure, but when you see how complete the ruins are, it's hard not to wonder how many other cities might be submerged out there. Near the island of Bimini in the Bahamas, there's a line of these huge stone blocks resting on the seafloor. They stretch out in a near straight path for hundreds of feet, like a broken causeway leading into the deep. Some call it Bimini Road, others say it's part of something much older. The stones look placed, not random. Each one is rectangular, some over 10 feet long, and they fit together in a way that doesn't seem natural. Divers first found them in the 1960s, and ever since people have been arguing about what they are. Geologists say it's just a natural formation caused by erosion and fracturing, but the layout does feel deliberate. Some believe it's a remnant of an ancient harbor, or again, maybe even part of the lost city of Atlantis. And that's not just because it looks like the remains of a part of a city that's now underwater. See, Bimini Road sits very near where a supposed clairvoyant predicted that Atlantis would be found, a man named Edgar Cayce, who died in 1945. So that little detail has just helped fuel the rumors. But was Bimini Road actually a road, or does it just really happen to look like one? Perhaps. We'll never really know. Now this is cool. In early 2024, a group of archaeologists were digging in the Panama jungle when they opened a tomb that hadn't been touched in over 1,000 years. And what was inside? A whole bunch of treasure. There were gold belts, gold plates, earrings shaped like crocodiles, bells, bone flutes, and I never thought I'd say this out loud in my life, but there was also a skirt made out of dog teeth. Yeah, dog teeth. As for who was buried there, they're calling him the Lord of the Flutes. But he actually wasn't alone. Archaeologists say up to 31 other people were sacrificed and buried with him. The tomb was completely hidden under the jungle and totally untouched. And the level of gold and craftsmanship here was impressive. One researcher said the discovery had, quote, incalculable historical and cultural value, end quote. Now, this wasn't the kind of place archaeologists expected to find a burial like this. It's not one of the major empires like the Aztec or Maya. It's just a small group living out in the jungle. So how did this much gold end up here? And who was this guy? No one's really sure, but it definitely makes you wonder how much we still don't know about ancient civilizations hiding out in the rainforest. This wasn't even supposed to be a discovery. In 2024, a grad student named Luke Ald Thomas was going through some old LiDAR data, basically laser scans of the jungle done to check on forest health, nothing to do with archaeology in this case. But then he noticed something odd. There's strange lines, big rectangles, stuff that didn't look natural at all. And it turns out he just found an entire lost Maya city that no one had any idea existed. They're calling it Valeriana. and it's massive. There are over 6,000 buildings with pyramids, ball courts, plazas, roads, and a water system. And the wildest part is that it was just sitting under the trees the whole time. Experts think as many as 50,000 people lived there around 750 to 850 CE, and somehow this whole place got completely forgotten. It's like if someone found a major city the size of San Francisco completely covered in forest and just nobody noticed it for over 1,000 years. That's how unexplored this part of the jungle is. In 2023, archaeologist Ivan Sprayitz and his team were deep in the Mexican jungle, just hacking through trees with machetes, and that's when they came across something massive. It was an entire lost Maya city totally swallowed by the forest. They'd set out to see what was up after scanning the forest with LiDAR. They named the place Akamtun, which means stone column in the Yucatec Maya language, and that's because this place is filled with giant stone pillars. They found pyramids, ceremonial plazas, altars, carved staircases, and a ball court, all built high up on natural terraces to keep everything above flood level. According to Sprayitz, when we got there, our suspicions were confirmed. Architecturally, it was truly massive. They think Akamtun was at its peak between 600 and 900, the late classic Maya period. It's probably a pretty important city, but obviously, at some point it was abandoned and totally forgotten. And it just sat there for over 1,000 years, buried under layers of trees and vines. So back in 2015, scientists exploring the Mesquite jungle in Honduras found something that for a long time had only been a legend. A lost city buried deep in the rainforest, filled with stone sculptures of jaguars, half-human creatures, thrones, all kinds of ceremonial objects. They nicknamed it the City of the Jaguar. This place is interesting because it lines up with old stories about La Ciudad Blanca, or the White City, a legendary place that's been part of folklore for ages. Just nobody had any proof it existed. The whole thing started with a LiDAR scan. They noticed straight lines under the trees, so a team led by archaeologist Christopher Fisher and filmmaker Steve Elkins went to check it out, and they found what Fisher called the most undisturbed site he'd ever been part of. He told National Geographic, "This is not like finding a pot in a museum. It's the whole site with context intact, and that's incredibly rare." Another archaeologist, Oscar Neil Cruz from the Honduran Institute of Anthropology, called it one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 21st century. Strangely, no one knows exactly who built this place. It's not Maya. It's like an entire culture just rose up, built this city, then disappeared without a trace. Now these are weird. Tiny gold artifacts found in Colombia made by the Cumbaya people over 1,000 years ago. They look suspiciously like airplanes. They've got wings, tail fins, some even have what looks like landing gear, and yes, they're made entirely of gold. Archaeologists say they're probably stylized animals like birds, bats, or insects, but still, some of these things look a little too aerodynamic. That's why people call them the Cumbaya airplanes. They've built models based on these designs, scaled them up, and guess what? A few of them actually flew. Now, to be clear, again, most researchers still say they're just abstract animal figures, but I mean, it's hard not to at least wonder, how did a pre-Columbian jungle culture make gold figurines that just so happen to resemble modern jets, and are aerodynamic enough to actually fly when scaled up in some cases? Either these are some really creative animal carvings, or the Cumbaya knew something that we didn't.
Hidden behind a secret door in Denmark's Little Museum of Nykøbing Falster, sorry, my Danish isn't very great, museum workers uncovered something straight out of a nightmare. A grotesque, wolf-headed humanoid preserved with unnerving realism. During renovations in 2017, staff stumbled upon a concealed chamber containing crates, documents, and sketches belonging to the eccentric Cornelius S.C. Rotter, the building's mysterious former owner. Among his bizarre collection was this unsettling figure, carefully crafted from animal fur, bones, and disturbingly lifelike materials, sparking whispers of occult rituals and forbidden practices. Museum curators remain baffled, uncertain whether Rotter intended this creature as dark art, a ceremonial relic, or something far more sinister. Whatever the truth, it now remains locked safely away from public eyes, hidden hidden in the back rooms, perhaps for our own protection. Hidden away in a museum's shadowy backroom sits a grotesque artifact that blurs the line between myth and nightmare. The skeletal remains of what can only be described as a centaur, a creature straight out of ancient Greek legend. Discovered tucked away behind locked doors in a European curiosity museum, this bizarre skeleton immediately sparked wild rumors about its origins. Constructed with startling anatomical precision, the piece seamlessly combines genuine human and equine bones, fueling unsettling theories of secret experiments or occult rituals conducted centuries ago. Museum insiders have hinted that the skeleton's origins trace back to an obscure 18th century collector known for his obsession with mythological hybrids, though details remain intentionally vague. Whether a twisted scientific hoax or a dark artifact with a genuinely cursed past, one thing's clear: there's a good reason it's being hidden far from the eyes of the public. Tucked away in a dimly lit museum storage room, hidden from public view, stands an artifact so strange it immediately sparks a sense of dread. A skeletal creature with oversized, almost alien features, known simply as the Atacama skeleton. Originally discovered in Chile's Atacama Desert, early tests baffled researchers due to its tiny size, elongated skull, and startlingly abnormal anatomy, fueling wild theories that ranged from extraterrestrial life to ancient curses. More detailed analysis eventually confirmed it was human, yet the mutations that warped its bones remained an eerie mystery, some speculating that ancient rituals or secretive experiments were involved. Now locked away behind closed doors, the skeleton remains a haunting relic, too unsettling to display openly, too intriguing to completely discard.
We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the witch bottles. Back in 2019, contractors were demolishing the chimney of a pub and inn in England when they came across something frightening. Inside the chimney were bottles containing things such as fish hooks, human teeth, and urine. But this isn't actually that weird of a find. In the 15th, 16th, and 17th century, people kept these in their home. They were referred to as witch bottles and were meant to keep witches away. Some of the bottles had fingernails and hair in them, and those were meant to act like charms to ward them away. But they were most commonly filled with pins, thorns, and urine. Apparently, the urine attracted the witches to the bottle, and then they would be trapped on the pins. These bottles have been found in churchyards, old buildings, and riverbanks all across Great Britain. I mean, I think that would be a pretty cool discovery if you found that in your house, just minus the jars of urine.
Coming in at number 4, we have a 250,000-year-old aluminum wedge. Aluminum, a material found in every kitchen for barbecue or, just like cooking in general. It's one of the most commonplace materials found on Earth, making up approximately 8.2% of the Earth's crust. However, we as humans only figured out how to extract it in the 1800s, taking even longer to figure out how to make it cost effective to do so. So when researchers found a 5-pound crafted aluminum object in Romania, buried next to 10,000-year-old mastodon bones, they had some questions. The object has clearly been crafted by someone for some purpose and is a combination of several materials, aluminum making up 89% of that. The aluminum wedge has been theorized to have been everything from a tool to a landing foot of perhaps an extraterrestrial ship. This object also feeds into the theory that there was a far advanced human civilization that existed long before us that was wiped out. This isn't the first time we've talked about aliens and forgotten civilizations, and honestly, the more videos we make, I'm getting swept away by the possibilities, because how nuts would that be? Anyways, whatever it was used for or whomever it used to belong to remains a mystery and leaves more questions than answers behind.
In our 3rd spot, we have the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone was discovered in 1799 and is a broken off section of a bigger stone slab. On it, it contains messages written in 3 different types of scripts: ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, Demotic scripts, and ancient Greek. This stone is said to be the key to decipher Egyptian scripts. The stone was discovered by soldiers belonging to Napoleon Bonaparte's army. In July of 1799, they were digging around and found it near the town of Rashid, and it was built into an old wall. In 1814, British scientist Thomas Young started studying the stone and made some progress with cracking it. But it wasn't until 1822 to 1824 that the hieroglyphic code was cracked. This was done by French linguist Jean-François Champollion. It's hypothesized that the slab was created in Egypt in 196 BC, but we still don't know who created it, and honestly, honestly, why? Some say it holds the key to be able to communicate with aliens, and that it actually came from space. At this point, who knows? Maybe we just seem like we love aliens.
Coming in at number 2, we have the Nazca Lines. Despite years of research, the Nazca Lines still don't make sense. For those of you who haven't heard, the Nazca Lines are massive geoglyphs that can even be seen from space. In fact, they can only be seen fully from the sky. Located 250 miles south of Lima, Peru, created by the Nazca people, there are over 70 precise depictions of animals including spiders and hummingbirds, plus an image of a decapitation and a large humanoid figure known as the astronaut. Guys, come on, aliens. Some of the designs from the geoglyphs measure around 30 miles, and experts have no idea how or why these drawings were created with such precision. After all, humans lack the tools to build such incredible designs. Or did they? It really makes you wonder what abilities or perhaps extraterrestrial intelligence was available to the Nazca people that we can't comprehend today.
And in our number 1 spot, we have the Shroud of Turin, otherwise known as the Holy Shroud. This is a piece of linen that is said to have been wrapped around Jesus during his burial. What's fascinating is how this piece of linen cloth appears to have a facial outline of Jesus' face. Of course, over the years there have been disputes to whether or not this is authentic. But in the 1970s, it was discovered that the markings on the cloth were consistent with a crucified body, and that the blood stains on it were from real human blood. But others argue that the shroud doesn't come from the right time period as Jesus. And in 2018, a team of researchers claimed that the bloodstains couldn't have come from him. Either way, it acts kind of like a symbol for the story of Christ. If it's not real, then someone please explain to me the whole face and body print that I see on it, because I'm genuinely curious.
Coming up at our number 10 spot, we have a throwing spear. A throwing spear that was approximately crafted over 10,300 years ago was discovered by Dr. Craig Lee from Montana State University in 2007. It was discovered in northern Wyoming. 10,300 years ago, holy moly. Just saying that is so trippy and hard to wrap my brain around the idea of people existing at that point. But in any case, this spear at first glance appeared just like a stick, but then after closer inspection, he discovered that it was a dart from a throwing spear. At this point, it is the oldest frozen artifact found yet. It's been a source of inspiration for others to continue the hunt for artifacts that are being revealed as a result of melting ice patches, and it certainly has created a sense of urgency for people to get hunting for these unbelievable items. In our number 9 spot, we have the Yukon treasures. A size 4 moccasin shoe from 1400 years ago was found melting in the Yukon, and my inner shopaholic is super excited about it. So of course I had to include it on this list. Along with this shoe, 2 other items were found: a barbed antler projectile point from about 1200 years ago, and throwing darts from 9,000 years ago. Apparently they were found by a husband and wife in 1997 who were hunting Dall sheep in the Yukon mountains when they smelled something extremely strange. It was dung. Yes, poop from a caribou. But the thing is, caribou hadn't been in this area for many years, so they decided to inspect it. Naturally? I wouldn't. Anyways, I guess they discovered that the poop was from thousands of years ago that had frozen into ice, and close behind it were these artifacts that had melted along with it. Pretty wild. In our number 8 spot, we have animal hair rope. While out exploring the mountaintops of western Mongolia, archaeologist and researcher Isaac Hart of the University of Utah discovered something quite interesting that he felt would truly help with discovering more about the Mongolia people in ancient times. They discovered a finely woven piece of animal hair rope. This rope was first thought to have been dropped in the ice recently. However, after scientists performed some radiocarbon tests on it to see how old it was proven to be more than 1,500 years old. Wow, that's some old rope. In our number 7 spot, we have horn curls. On this same trip, looking for more artifacts, Isaac Hart found some Argali sheep skulls and horn curls from 1,500 years ago, which were stacked in a pile by ancient hunters, and this finding completely discounted some old assumptions about the Mongolian people in the past. They were long thought to be herding societies, but these findings markings show that perhaps they were big hunters on mountain ice. Wow, sometimes just talking about this just makes me feel super grateful to be alive today. Although we are all wimps now, just going outside when it's cold, you know, I'm already looking for the outdoor heater. Where's the outdoor heater? What are we in ancient times? In our number 6 spot, we have Iron Age tunic. Apparently, as Norway's glaciers begin to melt, archaeologists are beginning to uncover a ridiculous amount of ancient treasures, and some say it is about 2,000 plus items to date. One of the most notable items, in my opinion, is some recovered clothing that was found. Honestly, not one item is better than the other. They all tell a story from the past and help us better understand how mountain populations lived. But still, I think it is so cool to see that they found some clothing that's approximately from 300 AD, an Iron Age tunic to be exact. That's not that old though compared to some of the other items that were found on this dig that were approximately 4,000 years old, but still, pretty cool.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Gosford glyphs. The Gosford glyphs refer to the rock carvings that seem to resemble ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics that were found in New South Wales. In Brisbane Water National Park, there is a site that contains 2 8-foot-high walls that contain over 300 carvings. It is said that these glyphs are about 4,600 years old. Experts have ended up decoding the glyphs and say that in one section it talks about 2 brothers coming here from Egypt. They got shipwrecked on this land and one got bitten by a snake and passed away. But the most striking carving is one that looks like an alien spaceship. It has a classic UFO shape with rays shooting down. Egyptologists are confused by this carving as it doesn't fit in with all the other ones, but they believe that it had to be significant in order for them to carve it. Ancient astronaut theorists believe that these markings show that people have been in contact with aliens before. In our 4th spot, we have the UFO tooth wheel. A Russian man was using coal to heat his home when he realized something odd sticking out of one of the pieces of coal. Researchers stated that it looked like a toothed wheel. Testing of this object revealed that it was 98% aluminum and 2% magnesium. What's weird is humans didn't learn to make aluminum until 1825, but this coal piece is 300 million years old, and the tooth object appears to be artificially made. This object resembles parts that are used in things like microscopes or electronic devices. So, who created this object and what was it originally used for? Scientists are still conducting tests on the object with hopes of uncovering the answers to those questions. In our 3rd spot, we have the Betts Mystery Sphere. On March 27, 1974, the Betts family were out examining a small brush fire near their property. While doing so, the family came across a completely smooth metal sphere about the size of a bowling ball. On the sphere, there was a triangle engraved on it. They took it home only to find out that it had very strange properties. One day when the Betts son was playing his guitar in the same room as the sphere started to emit a throbbing sound from it. The sound was strong enough to hurt the family's dog's ears. This sphere could also change direction, so if you pushed it or rolled it across the floor, it could roll forward, stop, and then roll right back to you. It was also said to be able to absorb power from solar energy, as it would be more active when exposed to the sun. The sphere would also sometimes emit vibrations as if something was operating on the inside of it. Now, they refused to let anyone analyze it until they linked the sphere to paranormal activity that started happening around their house. Like doors would slam or they would hear organ music around the house. So then they let scientists analyze it and said that it was just a normal sphere. But the family is convinced that something is controlling it. Maybe something of the extraterrestrial nature. Moving on, at number 2, we have the brass bell. In 1944, a 10-year-old boy by the name of Newton Anderson was shoveling coal into his furnace at his home. That's when a piece of coal was dropped and broke in half. Inside the coal revealed a mysterious bell. The coal that he was using was said to be about 300 million years old. Back then, the dominant life form on Earth was insects. So how could it have been manufactured back then? Also, the bell contained an unusual mixture of metals including copper, zinc, tin, arsenic, iodine, and selenium. Not a typical combination used to make objects. Now, a man named Boris Billis ended up taking the bell to the geology department at the University of Delaware. From there, they conducted studies and discovered that the bell was handmade. Now, of course, people were skeptical, thinking that the boy lied and didn't find the bell in coal. But in 2007, he underwent a polygraph test conducted by a specialist who worked on death row cases. It was discovered that he was indeed telling the truth. His report is even posted online for others to see. So people again have linked this strange object to aliens. And in our number one spot, we have the Wedge of Aiud. In 1974, construction workers in Romania were working in a village in Aiud. They were working near a river when they found a collection of strange objects buried 30 feet in the sand. Two of the objects were bones from mastodons, which are very distant relatives of the elephant. Beside the bones laid a mysterious wedge-shaped object. This object contained 89% aluminum, 6% copper, and a total of 12 elements altogether. Like I mentioned previously, aluminum wasn't discovered until around 1825. Yet this wedge lay next to bones that are from around 11,000 years ago. The wedge itself is theorized to be around 10,000 years old. People believe that this object just couldn't have existed back then. An aeronautical engineer stated that this object looks exactly like a piece of a landing gear for landing aircraft. This has left researchers to believe that extraterrestrials crashed here around 11,000 years ago, and this piece is part of their spacecraft.
Up in northern Kuwait, archaeologists dug up this tiny clay head from about 7,000 years ago, which looks undoubtedly alien. It's got slanted eyes, the long skull, flat nose, very much like a reptilian type alien creature. The clay itself wasn't from around there. It came from Mesopotamia, so this figurine probably traveled with traders crossing the region. Another interesting thing is that this was found in a regular living space, not some temple or grave, so it was probably part of someone's everyday life, not just some fancy ritual type thing. And no one really knows exactly what it means, but back then some tribes used to wrap babies' heads to shape their skulls a certain way, so maybe this might be a depiction of that. Or, it could just be a sculpture of some ancient alien visitor. Off the coast of Veracruz, Mexico, divers found this small jade piece that looks kind of like a corn cob from the future. It's got a cone on top and these perfect little square patterns all over it, carved out of jadeite, a stone that's way harder than steel. No machines, no drills, it was all carved by hand. Dates back to the Olmec era, and archaeologists think it was probably a ceremonial object. Maybe an ornament you'd find on a staff, or something used in rituals tied to corn, which was basically life for them. The fact that it was found underwater adds to the mystery though. Maybe it was an offering or it was lost in a flood. The detail is crazy precise, so it almost looks like it could have been made by a machine, but no, it was just ancient craftsmanship. The Ashango bone is a piece of prehistoric bone found near the border of Congo and Uganda, dated to about 24,000 years ago. What's interesting about this bone are the rows of notches carved into it. There are 3 columns of marks that seem way too organized to be random scratches. Some researchers think these marks might represent early math, simple counting, almost like a super ancient calculator or record-keeping tool. This would mean that tens of thousands of years ago, humans were thinking about numbers and patterns more deeply than we typically attribute to them. Way before writing or advanced civilizations, people were already tracking stuff and maybe even doing simple math. There's still debate about what exactly the marks mean, but the Ashango bone pushes back how early we think math started. In Colombia's Cambaya region, archaeologists discovered these small gold figurines that look surprisingly like tiny airplanes. The pieces have shapes that look a lot like wings, tail fins, and a body that looks like a plane's fuselage, stuff that made some people jump to the conclusion that they were proof of ancient alien technology. The artifacts date from between 200 and 900 the years, and they come from the Cambaya culture, which was famous for their incredible metalworking. But most archaeologists think these shapes aren't planes at all. Instead, they're probably meant to be animals like birds, fish, or insects, creatures that were important in their mythology. The shapes might be stylized or a bit abstract, which can look like modern machines to us, but had a totally different meaning back then. But hey, you never know. What is undeniable though is the craftsmanship. These tiny figures are so nicely detailed, made from gold so pure it's still shiny after more than 1,000 years. The Ica stones are a bunch of rocks from Peru covered with carvings that show some very strange things, like humans and dinosaurs hanging out together, people doing complex surgeries with advanced tools, and this guy riding around on a giant bird or pterodactyl. They're pretty incredible, but most experts say these stones aren't actually ancient, that they were probably carved sometime in the 1940s by locals trying to make a quick buck selling mysterious ancient artifacts to tourists. Obviously, the content of the carvings doesn't match what we know about prehistoric times, and there is zero proof they come from the distant past. Even still, the stones have become super popular with conspiracy theorists who want to believe that the Flintstones was historically accurate. Hey, I do too. The Drop of Stones are one of those artifacts that sound a little too weird to be real, which is probably why they've become such a legend in ancient alien circles. The story goes like this. In the 1930s, a group of Chinese archaeologists were exploring caves high in the Bayan-Har mountains of Tibet and supposedly found a bunch of stone discs, about a foot across, each carved with spiral grooves. In total, there were said to be 12 of these things. The markings, once decoded, told the story of a spaceship that crash-landed 12,000 years before. The beings inside were called the Drapa, and they couldn't return home, so they settled in the mountains. The tale blew up in UFO communities, and the stones have been referenced ever since. Now, the thing is, there's no confirmed location for the stones, no major museum has them, and it's led most researchers to call this a hoax. But the idea still floats around because with anything like this, there's always the slim chance that it could be real.
Coming in at number 5, Pearls of Death. While it's probably a pretty safe blanket rule that you shouldn't go around touching much of anything you find in Ed and Lorraine's demonic collection, some stuff is probably a little worse than others, and this next one falls into the latter category. Notoriously one of the most dangerous items found inside the museum, the Pearls of Death is a cursed necklace said to do exactly as the name suggests. Allegedly, anyone who dares place them around their neck will be choked and suffocated to death. Now, my question about this necklace is it like a Frodo and the Ring style situation where it will call to you, slowly infecting your brain through mind control until it practically forces you to place it around your neck? Or does it just wait for someone to unknowingly do it before it unleashes all hell on the victim? I guess I will never know, because you can bet I won't be testing it out for myself. Coming in at number 4, the Conjuring Mirror. Despite what the name would have you believe, the Conjuring Mirror actually has really nothing to do with the Conjuring movies. Instead, this haunted mirror gets its name from the fact that it was, at one point, allegedly used to summon or conjure spirits. Once in the possession of a man named Stephen Zellner, legend has it that Stephen practiced a kind of witchcraft known as catoprotromancy, I probably butchered that, in order to see into the future and seek out revenge on his enemies. However, the more that Stephen used the mirror, the more and more corrupt he and his use of the magic became. Eventually, it's said the evil spirits he had conjured to do his bidding became too powerful to control and turned on the very person who had summoned them. Soon, Stephen began fearing for his life, so as a last resort, he decided to reach out to a local priest to see if the evil spirits could be exorcised from the home. But instead, the priest put him in touch with Ed and Lorraine. Upon their arrival at Stephen's home, they immediately knew Stephen was in grave trouble. And so to keep him safe, they performed a reverse incantation spell to seal up all the spirits back inside the mirror from which they had been conjured. Afterwards, Stephen begged them to take the mirror away from him, and that is how it came to live in Ed and Lorraine's museum. However, don't get too comfortable. Despite the spell they cast, Ed and Lorraine still claim to have experienced many terrifying moments with the spirits they angered from trapping inside this mirror. And who knows what could bring them back out. Coming in at number 3, the Shadow Doll. When it comes to creepy dolls, I'll be honest, it doesn't take much to freak me out. But with that being said, there is definitely a very good reason why the shadow doll is one of the most feared possessions in the entire museum. Now, what starts off this seemingly endless list of creepy things about this doll is that there is no definitive answer as to why it was created or who created it. But according to Ed and Lorraine's files, it was made using both human and animal bones and was absolutely used in satanic rituals. So it is definitely possessed by some less than ideal company. Said to have been found in an antique shop by a couple, they began to think something was wrong after they kept waking up night after night covered in inexplicable scratches. But it wasn't until the doll began showing up in their nightmares, telling them that she was going to kill them, that they decided to get rid of the terrifying toy. And good thing they did too. Legend has it that if someone takes a picture of this doll, she will visit you in your dreams and kill you in your sleep. Just one more reason to never trust a creepy doll. Coming in at number 2, a satanic idol. As the story goes, in 1991, a hunter was walking through the woods on the lookout for deer when he began to feel an overwhelming sense of paranoia, like he was being watched or something. At that very moment, he turned around to see this creepy doll leaned up against a tree, staring at him, and he could have sworn that it appeared out of nowhere. Immediately, the hunter knew he should not be here, and so he began walking as quickly as he could to find a way out of the forest. Then, suddenly, an old man dressed in all black robes appeared beside him. He looked like a priest, the hunter thought, but something wasn't quite right. Every step he took, the priest matched him, and eventually he became so freaked out, he actually debated shooting at the priest with his arrow to scare him off. But instead, he decided to ask the priest how to get out of the forest. But creepily, the priest did not speak. Instead, he pointed off into another direction, turned around, and left the man alone once again. Now, luckily, the hunter escaped, and the following day, after telling his friends the strange events, they suggested that he reach out to Ed and Lorraine. Upon telling them his story, they explained that the priest was a well-known leader of a satanic cult, and that the creepy doll he had encountered was actually an idol used for ritual purposes. However, the Warrens, being who they were, wanted to get this idol for the museum, and so Ed ventured into the forest, found the doll, and brought it back home. Soon after, however, strange things began happening. Allegedly, one time Ed was speaking with Lorraine, turned away for a second, looked back, and she was suddenly 30 feet away and passed out on the ground. He called the ambulance, and she spent the next 3 days in hospital in and out of consciousness. And according to Ed, she actually levitated while in the hospital. The Warrens always firmly believed that the satanic priest was working through the doll Ed had taken from the forest and was trying to punish them for taking it. Let's just hope no one was ever hospitalized after that. And last up in our number 1 spot, Annabelle. You didn't really think I was gonna do a list about haunted things found in Ed and Lorraine's museum and not bring up the famous Annabelle, did you? Although nowadays she is locked up tight, this wasn't always the case. Back in 1970, Annabelle was gifted to a nursing student named Donna. But it didn't take long before Donna and her roommate Angie knew that something was off. After about a month, the roommates began finding disturbing messages lying around their apartment, warning them to help Lou. Lou was one of their friends who had apparently warned the girls of the doll since day 1. Eventually, things got so creepy that the woman contacted a medium who told them not to be afraid, that the doll was merely possessed by a young girl named Annabelle Higgins who had died on the property years prior. The medium advised them that Annabelle felt safe here and would like to stay, so they agreed. But that was all a part of the demon's plan. Not long after, Lou stayed over, and when he awoke from a nightmare, he found he couldn't move his body. And then, like straight out of a horror movie, he says Annabelle walked up his body and strangled him until he passed out. After that, the girls contacted a priest who put them in touch with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who discredited the medium and said it was, in fact, a very dangerous demon possessing this doll. However, even now, despite being locked up, the doll should be deeply feared. It was reported once that a man who visited the museum mocked the doll and only a few days later died after losing control of his motorbike. So yeah, she very well could be the most terrifying doll on the planet.
We have the stolen artifact of Pompeii. This story has been in the news a lot lately. So after enduring 15 years of bad luck, a Canadian woman returned an artifact that she stole from Pompeii. So this woman, identified as Nicole, apparently stole some mosaic tiles, stones, pieces of plaster, and other little artifacts from the archaeological park of Pompeii during her trip there in 2005. 15 years later, she mailed the artifacts back with a note explaining that she experienced nothing but bad luck after taking the objects. She struggled both financially and physically. In the letter she wrote that she suffered from breast cancer twice. She wanted to put an end to the curse and didn't want her family to suffer from her actions. So she sent the pieces back.
Moving on to number 9, we have the lost treasure of the Lydian. This treasure was found back in the 60s and it was seen as one of the best archaeological discoveries of its time. It was found in Turkey and it was said that there were over 300 pieces of golden ware. If you were down there, you could have been balling out of control, wearing all that fancy jewelry and making yourself look like a stud. But you would quickly become overcome with gold sickness. This is the apparent curse that is attached to these treasures. Gold sickness is when someone will start to get ill over time, but also have an affinity to collect gold. It's like an uncontrollable urge to stockpile gold like you're some sort of dragon. You'll slurp up gold faster than Joey Chestnut scarfs down ice cream. This curse may have been solidified in 2006. One of the pieces was being returned from America to Turkey and it was discovered to be a fake. That means someone made a replica and then stole the original. Could this curse have pushed them to make this theft and now the person is somewhere hoarding large amounts of gold? Maybe this is why CEOs do whatever they can to collect large amounts of wealth they can never spend.
Coming in at number 8, we have the ballista balls. Back in the 1980s, a crew excavated hundreds of Roman ballista balls on the border of Israel and Syria. These were used as cannonballs during the Great Revolt. There were so many of them that one man decided to take 2. I mean, surely they wouldn't notice that 2 were missing, right? And honestly, he was right, no one noticed. But in 2015, the balls were returned to the museum's courtyard along with a note from the thief. The note read, and I quote, "I stole them in July 1995, and since then they have brought me nothing but trouble. Please do not steal antiquities." Use that as a warning, folks.
Coming in at number 7, we have voodoo dolls. I mean, we should know that these are not to be messed with, but for some reason people don't take cursed objects seriously and they pay the price. A pair of voodoo dolls were stolen from an occult museum in New Orleans. The owner said that they noticed this and they didn't feel any sort of anger because they knew that the person who stole them would feel the fury of the dolls before the sun set on the city. When someone says something as ominous as that, you know that they mean business. She continued to say that the museum was the dolls' home and they will be wicked if they are not returned. Just 2 days later, a man returned with the dolls. Apparently he was missing teeth, missing fingernails, had pus coming out of his gums, and had sores all over his body. And outside of being in an extreme amount of pain, he said that he was haunted by visions of his own death. The museum owner laughed and told him to go to the hospital and gladly took back the dolls.
Moving on to number 6, we have the souvenir. Look, I get it. You go on a vacation somewhere and you want a souvenir or something to remember your trip by. But don't steal. Instead, just go get something from the local gift shop. I mean, that's what gift shops are there for. Now, one place in particular that is a hot spot for thieves is Arizona's Petrified Forest National Park. Over the years, thousands of individuals have stolen petrified forest rocks from there. One woman in particular stole an artifact, and this is what happened to her. She claims, and I quote, "Upon returning home, we first found out that my stepmother had kidney failure. Then our dog died. I had a really close call in having a bad auto accident. Our truck broke down needing major repairs. Our cat died. And last night a gas well blew out a cap, causing us to be evacuated from our home. So please take these pieces back before we have any more bad luck." Man, those objects are extremely cursed. So far, they have had 1,200 antiques returned back to them, all sent with letters saying that they were cursed with bad luck.
The Regent diamond was discovered in India in 1698 by a slave who, according to the legend, cut open his own leg and hid the gem inside the wound to sneak it out. Before he could escape though, an English sea captain found out, killed him, and sold the diamond. From there, the stone made its way to France and was bought by Philippe II, regent of France. That's where the diamond got its current name. It ended up in the French crown jewels and was worn by Louis XV, then Louis XVI, and Marie Antoinette. Considering both Louis and Marie ended up losing their heads during the French Revolution, people started calling the diamond cursed. It was stolen during the Revolution, turned up years later, and eventually ended up with Napoleon Bonaparte, who set it into the hilt of his sword. He took that into battles, into power, and then eventually into exile. The Black Prince's Ruby. At first glance, it looks like one of the crown jewels of England. And technically it is, but the Black Prince's Ruby isn't actually a ruby at all. It's a giant red spinel. A spinel is a gemstone that looks a lot like a ruby, but is actually a different mineral. Anyway, the stone first shows up in history in 1362, belonging to Abu Sa'id, the last Sultan of Granada. He arranged a peace meeting with King Pedro of Castile, but he was killed, some say by Pedro himself. The gem was taken from his body. People say the act of betrayal kicked off what's referred to as the Sultan's Curse. Pedro gave the stone to Edward of Woodstock, better known as the Black Prince, and he never became king. He died of a mysterious illness. His son Richard II took the throne, but he was killed. Then came Henry IV, who died from disease. His son Henry V inherited the stone and wore it into battle. He survived, but the bad luck didn't stop there. The gem kept getting passed down through rulers who died young, were executed, or ended up exiled. It's now set into the imperial state crown, on display in the Tower of London. Bisbee's stoop chair, also known as the dead man's chair, is an old oak chair with a pretty dark reputation. The story goes back to 1702 in North Yorkshire, when a guy named Thomas Busby was executed for taking the life of his father-in-law. The two ran a shady coin counterfeiting business. They had a huge fight one day and Bisbee ended up killing him. Now, depending on who you ask, Bisbee cursed the chair either while intoxicated and sitting in it during his arrest at a pub, or while on his way to the gallows. After Bisbee was hanged and his body was displayed near an inn, the chair stayed at that same pub, which was later renamed the Bisbee Stoop Inn. That's when people started noticing a disturbing pattern. People who sat in it seemed to meet sudden violent ends. During World War II, Canadian airmen stationed nearby would drink at that pub, and locals swore the ones who sat in the chair, they'd never come back from missions. By the 70s, there were enough fatal accidents tied to it that the pub's landlord got spooked and he donated it to Thirsk Museum. Today it's still there, but it hangs from the ceiling so that no one can actually sit in it. And honestly, even if you don't believe in curses, wouldn't you be at least a little apprehensive about trying? The Black Orlov diamond is one of the most famous cursed gems in the world. The story behind it is brutal. The story goes that it was stolen from a Hindu temple in southern India, where it had been used as the eye of a statue of the god Brahma. The moment it was taken, the gem was supposedly cursed by a priest who caught the thief in the act. From that point on, death and disaster seemed to follow whoever owned it. In the 30s, a New York diamond dealer named J.W. Paris took the gem to the US to try and sell it. Not long after, he ended up jumping to his death from a Manhattan skyscraper. Then two Russian princesses who owned the diamond, they also took their own lives within a few years of each other. Eventually, a diamond dealer named Charles F. Winson bought it, had it recut and mounted onto a brooch with dozens of white diamonds. Some say he did it to break the curse, but that part's just speculation. The gem still exists though. It's been on display at a number of museums, including the Smithsonian. The Moon of Baroda is a 24-karat yellow diamond with a reputation that you probably wouldn't want attached to your jewelry. It was found about 500 years ago in India and spent centuries in the hands of a royal dynasty that ruled parts of the country. In the mid-1700s, it made its first trip overseas. It was briefly owned by Empress Marie Therese of Austria, mother of Marie Antoinette. After her death, the diamond went back to India, and some people blamed her fate on the diamond's curse. Then, all the way in 1953, Detroit jeweler Mayer Rosenbaum bought it and strung the diamond on a leather cord and had Marilyn Monroe wear it while promoting the musical Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Well, that same year, her career and personal life started to spiral. The Moon of Baroda has popped up at auctions in 1990 and 2018, but both times the buyer stayed anonymous, so who knows what happened to them. The Conjured Chest, also called the Death Chest, is a plain-looking wooden chest sitting in the Kentucky History Museum, but its backstory is anything but plain. It all goes back to the 1830s in Kentucky, when a man named Jeremiah Graham had a chest built by an enslaved man named Remus. The story goes that Remus, along with other enslaved workers, was forced to make it and never got paid for his work. So, allegedly, he did what anyone would do in that situation, and he just cursed the thing. The first victim was Graham's own son, who died under mysterious circumstances. After that, the chest supposedly racked up quite a body count, at least 16 people over the decades, with deaths ranging from sudden illnesses to freak accidents. Some families even tried putting a Bible inside it to kind of cancel out the curse, but that didn't seem to do much. Eventually, the chest got such a reputation that it was donated to the Kentucky History Museum, where it's been sitting ever since.
Number 10, Uluru Rock. I'll be honest, I'm a rock guy. I go on vacation, I'm goggles up the entire time. I love looking for geology and history. It's hard not to want to bring something home every trip, right? But depending where you are, you could be in a lot of trouble for doing so. In the Northern Territory of Australia, for example, there is a beautiful monumental sandstone formation. It's known as Ayers Rock, or Uluru Rock. Now this site is sacred for the Aboriginal people of the land. They respectfully ask that no visitors take any piece of the sandstone home with them. Yet of course, some of us can't follow simple instructions, and in numerous cases, bad luck has followed them home as well. Breakups, death of a loved one, you name it, it's all bad. Why risk it? Just leave things alone, you know? Number 9. Robert the Evil Doll. A man named Rob Otto, he was given a doll that looked a lot like him. One of his servants who didn't like him made him this doll. This was clearly a voodoo doll, right? Obviously, this is an obvious trap. Neighbors would then hear Robert talking to this doll. Robert and Robert the podcast, I guess. I don't know, tune in. Now, after Robert's untimely death, the new owners of the house found that same doll. They found it in the attic, still there. That family was haunted afterwards by the same doll. They would hear threats coming from it at night, so now the doll is on display at a museum in Key West. No more threats, just glass cage forever. Number 8. Elmo. The Sesame Street icon has been in homes for many, many years. There was a literal stampede when Tickle Me Elmo was released. An employee was sadly trampled, got his ribs broken, is horrible. People go crazy for these things. When the Elmo Knows Your Name toy was launched by Fisher-Price back in 2005, there were 15,000 names ready to go. Only one family was traumatized. Only one. That's not bad, all things considered. That Elmo toy apparently spoke on its own, threatening to harm the family often, so they tossed it out immediately. This happened more than once though. The audio sounded off for some devices in some homes. Be Like Elmo sounded like Beat Up Elmo. The Elmo phone was also released in 2009, and it often said 456, but in some cases it sounded like Who Wants to Have Very different things, those two. Those are two different phrases. Those are not the same at all. We're all learning things with Elmo, whether you like it or not. Number 7. Belcourt Castle chairs. This one's like the opposite of musical chairs. These chairs are no fun at all. This Rhode Island ballroom is beautiful. It's a cottage mansion, a lot of wood, a lot of history. It smells great, I bet. I would have bet that there would be a ghost woman in the ballroom. Turns out it's actually a handful of chairs. Who knew? That was my second guess. Handful of chairs. That's good. Visitors have reported an eerie feeling when standing close to these chairs. They get the chills, they get this sense of energy almost. Now, things certainly go a step further. Some guests have seen the chair move on their own, or they've had the chairs push against them, all of course by some invisible force. I'm not sure if I believe in ghosts personally, but if I saw a chair moving, yeah, that would do it. Just one of those would definitely flip my beliefs for sure. Haunted furniture, that gets me. That's pretty bad. Number 6, the haunted skull. I'm pretty sure every skull is haunted. No, but I don't know. This one specifically, ooh, this one's real haunted though. Here we go. Located in the Burton Agnes Hall over in England, the Screaming Skull sits quite still, but its curse is very real and very active. The Screaming skull once belonged to Catherine Ann Griffith, who died in 1620. Now, reports of strange figures or shadows around the skull, that's one thing, but many people believe they could still hear the screams of one Catherine Ann Griffith to this day.
Coming in at number 5 is Little Bastard. This is one of the most famous cursed items of all time. This was a car driven by James Dean, and it would end up being his doom. But he didn't steal this cursed vehicle, but there were some people who definitely tried. After the accident that took the life of the famous movie star, the car was taken to a body shop where they started to strip it for parts. One night a group of thieves came in to take off with some parts from this car. Now we don't know if these people targeted the body shop or if they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, one of these thieves tried to strip a part off the engine and the whole thing came crashing down on top of him and killed him. The other 2 men got away swiftly, but that was just one of the many deaths connected to the Porsche 550 Spider.
In our 4th spot, we have King Tut's Cobra Staff. So of course, you all probably have heard the urban legend surrounding King Tut and his curse. Basically, it said that King Tut's tomb and all the artifacts that were inside are cursed. And this might indeed be true. After the expedition of King Tut's tomb, several men mysteriously died. Well, rumor has it that this happened all because one of the men stole King Tut's Cobra Staff. Archaeologist Howard Carter claimed that when they found King Tut's tomb, it was already robbed. But this may have been a cover-up. It's thought that him and his team took a couple of artifacts as souvenirs, in particular the Cobra Staff. In fact, one of Carter's team members, James Henry Breasted, returned home to find his pet canary eaten by a cobra, and the cobra was still in the cage. Cobra Staff goes missing, and a cobra is found in his home. Coincidence? I think not.
Coming in at number 3, we have Timur's body. When you take a dude out of his tomb, is that stealing? I think so. During World War II, Joseph Stalin had the bright idea that he would mess around with some dark magic during a pivotal moment of the war. I don't know if he was a superstitious man, but I think he should have been, because maybe he could have prevented this. Timur was one of the most ruthless conquerors in history. It said that 17 million people died because of this dude. He was at the helm of one of the largest empires in history. On his tomb it said, "He who disturbs me shall unleash an enemy more ruthless than I." And on the day that Stalin dug up Timur, Hitler did his surprise attack on the Soviets. Bad move, Stalin. Sounds like you really dropped the ball on this one. Well, I think that Stalin is a stubborn dude and didn't want to bury him again, but eventually he broke and decided that the curse was real and buried Timur again. And then the Soviets had their first victory against the Germans.
In our 2nd spot, we have the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Back in 2004, an unnamed German man stole an ancient Egyptian artifact displaying hieroglyphic text. A couple of months later, the artifact was sent back to Egypt by the man's son. The man had died, so he couldn't do it himself. Apparently, shortly after returning home from his trip, the man's health randomly started to decline. He got unexplained paralysis and fevers. Shortly after, he developed cancer and died. The man's son believed that his father was subjected to the Pharaoh's curse, and he sent the artifact back in hopes to end it.
And coming in at the number 1 spot is the most evil car in America. The 1964 Dodge 330. This vehicle will go down in history as one of the most horrific four-wheelers to ever meet the blacktop. This thing has a ton of spooky events that have been tied to it. It started off as a police cruiser. You think something that had the purpose of serving up justice would have a noble heart. Well, if you had that opinion about this car, you would be dead wrong. There were 3 officers who had the misfortune of driving the 330, and each one of them would die in a murder suicide. It eventually worked its way into the public, and the first owner said that the car seemed like it was constantly trying to kill her, as the doors would fly open and the steering would jam while she was on the highway. Eventually a church caught wind of this devil's chariot, and they went to go vandalize it so no one could drive it again. Every last person involved in this mission died. Some of them were decapitated and others were struck by lightning. Eventually the car was stolen and taken to a chop shop, and where it was broken down into parts, and these parts were separated into different corners of the world so this car could never harm anyone again.
And we begin with a tale from the very early days of Hollywood. Silent film star Rudolph Valentino's first lead role in 1919 launched him into stardom. And by the time he was filming a movie called Young Raja in 1922, he was a Hollywood heartthrob. But the movie flopped. Hey, no sweat. Every actor's been in some duds, but this was only the beginning of a streak of bad luck, and some say that his misfortune was thanks to a tiger's eye ring he started wearing during the shoot. In the years that followed, Valentino went through 2 messy divorces, he got arrested and tried for bigamy, and he went on to fight with his studio over money. Then in 1926, Valentino suddenly collapsed at the Hotel Ambassador in New York. He had brutal stomach pain. At first, doctors thought it was appendicitis, but once they opened him up, they realized it was way worse. He had perforated ulcers and peritonitis, which is basically a serious infection in the lining of your abdomen. For a minute, it actually looked like he might pull through, but a few days later, the infection spread. He developed pneumonia, and without antibiotics back then, there wasn't much doctors could do. Just a little over a week after that collapse, he was dead at only 31. But this is not where the story ends. Not by a long shot. His fiancée, actress Paula Negri, started wearing the ring, and she ended up getting seriously ill. She gave it to her lover, singer Russ Colombo, who was then killed in a freak shooting accident. Colombo's best friend Joe Casino then took it, only to die after being hit by a truck. His brother Del took it next, and then it was stolen by a burglar. Lucky for him too, because that thief, James Willis, was later killed by police. He died with the tiger eye ring still on his finger. Today, the ring's locked away in an LA bank vault, which of course has been robbed since it's been there. People have been known to take rocks from the Gettysburg battlefield, thinking, it's just a harmless souvenir. But then they've mailed them back with desperate letters about all the terrible stuff that happened after. A park ranger named Maria Brady says the park regularly receives packages with stones, twigs, or dirt, and, notes like, "I took this and everything went wrong, please, I'm sorry." One guy returned 3 rocks in 2006 after a string of injuries, a divorce, and a prison sentence. Another person returned a single stone and wrote that they'd lost their job, gone through multiple surgeries, and had every relationship fall apart since taking it. The park doesn't advertise this stuff, but the rangers take it seriously. They've got a whole file full of apology letters. The gold of Tolosa is this ancient treasure that's been blamed for death, betrayal, and plain old bad luck for hundreds of years. The story goes back to 106 BCE, when Roman general Quintus Servilius Capio plundered a massive stash of gold and silver from the Gauls in Tolosa, which is modern-day Toulouse in France. There were about 15,000 talents, which would be worth billions today, but right after the general took it, everything went to hell. The treasure mysteriously vanished while being transported. Some say bandits stole it, others think Capio had just stashed it for himself. Either way, nobody saw it again. Then Capio's army was wiped out, and he was exiled from Rome, stripped of his citizenship, and fined so much it just ruined his family. People started saying the treasure was cursed, and Capio was just the first to fall. His descendants didn't fare any better. His son was killed during war, and his great-grandson was Marcus Junius Brutus, the same Brutus who killed Julius Caesar, and later took his own life after losing the Battle of Philippi. Back in 1857, during the Indian Mutiny, a British soldier named Colonel W. Ferris took what he thought was a valuable purple sapphire from the Temple of Indra in Kanpur. He brought it back to England, and pretty soon his life started to fall apart. His finances started to suck, his family members got seriously ill, and just bad luck seemed to follow them everywhere. At first, Ferris chalked it up to just life being life. Bad things happen, and sometimes, unfortunately, all at once. But after he loaned the gem to a family friend who later took their own life, he started to suspect that maybe something else was going on. By 1890, the gem had ended up in the hands of Edward Heron Allen, a scientist and writer. He was not a superstitious guy at all. At first, that is. But after he lent the stone to a friend who was immediately hit with a wave of bum luck, and later to a singer who claimed she lost her voice permanently after wearing it, Heron Allen started to wonder. He tried throwing it into a canal, but it was found and returned to him. Eventually, he sealed it inside 7 boxes with protective charms and locked it in a bank vault, leaving instructions not to open it until long after his death.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Ulfbert swords. Imagine if Excalibur was real and it wasn't just a story after all. Here at number 10, we have swords that are so powerful, they still have experts baffled. When you think of medieval times, you probably picture a bunch of people carrying cool broadswords everywhere, but in reality, swords were actually incredibly expensive to have made, even around this time, anywhere between 1,200 to 24 grand in today's currency for one sword. And that's just for a pretty good sword. For a really good sword, well,
Get ready to sell your soul, man. The Ulfbert swords were the strongest, sharpest, and most flexible swords ever made, though no one really knows who made them, except maybe a guy named Ulfbert, but there's no record of him. Primarily associated with Vikings, researchers speculate that the swords were made in the Kingdom of Francia. The Kingdom of Francia, now France and Germany. These suckers could even cut through chainmail and were the perfect blend of materials. The process for combining the materials required a 1600 degrees Celsius oven, which was not only hot enough to melt the metals, but also helped draw out any impurities. However, here's where things get weird. The process couldn't be replicated until the industrial era, after the sword stopped production after 200 years. So how could they have been made before that? No one knows who began it and who carried on the tradition, but the blade still remains some of the finest ever made in history.
Coming in at number 9, we have Stonehenge. Located in Wiltshire, England, the Stonehenge is one of UK's most famous landmarks. It consists of a bunch of standing stones in a ring, with some stones placed on top of each other. It's said to have taken 1,500 years to build this. It was built around 5,000 to 4,000 years ago. Some stones are 30 feet tall and weigh 25 tons. The smallest stones weigh about 4 tons. So how the heck did these people manage to build this big structure? That is something we still don't have the answers to. It's not like they had the machinery back then to help them. So how did they move these hefty rocks and then get them on top of each other? Did they possess superhuman strength or what? Not only that, but we don't know why they were built. Some believe that it was part of a burial ground. Others think that it was part of ritual activities, but we still don't know for sure. And unless a builder comes back from the dead to tell us, I doubt we'll ever figure out what the purpose behind Stonehenge is.
Coming in at number 8, we have the Dropa stones. I honestly love how many times I get to talk about potential alien stuff on this channel. In 1938, 716 12,000-year-old circular discs were discovered in a cave between the border of China and Tibet. About 1 foot in diameter, the discs allegedly told the story of an alien ship crash landing and that the ship contained the Dropa people. Near the site, Dr. Chipu Tai also found tiny skeleton bodies with larger than normal heads, like they were kind of like oval in shape, though no photos or documentation to prove that that part exists. The discs were stored in Beijing University for 2 decades before they were released to be studied, and one researcher was the one to decipher the extraterrestrial tale in just 4 years. However, after the stones were taken down after the exhibition, they haven't been seen since. Many say they are still at the university, while others speculate whether they existed at all. Some, however, were sent to Russia to be studied, where part of their studies included placing the discs on a turntable. The discs appeared to hum, but any further details on what they found still remain a mystery.
In our 7th spot, we have the Petrodox. This next artifact is quite strange and might have been made by aliens. Let me explain. So back in 1998, a man named John J. Williams discovered something quite strange. He was out hiking in North America when he saw this thing sticking out of the ground. It looked as if it was an electrical connector. When he unearthed it, he discovered that this device was embedded into a rock. The rock has 3 metallic prongs just sticking out of it, and it wasn't glued or welded into the rock, leading researchers to believe that it existed while the rock was forming. But here's the thing, research shows that the rock is 100,000 years old. Back then, we didn't have electrical components like that, so what the heck? Now, Williams won't let anyone break into the object to further analyze it, but x-rays done on the stone show that it has a weird opaque internal structure. He's convinced that this thing is from an advanced ancient civilization, or from an extraterrestrial race, aka aliens. Like, I'm not gonna lie, but it's pretty weird, so just saying.
Coming in at number 6, we have the Baghdad Battery. Here is yet another example of how our ancestors absolutely soared past our expectations of them. We thought electricity was just a modern thing. A 2,000-year-old battery discovered by Wilhelm Koenig in 1940. It was uncovered during a dig of an ancient village near Baghdad and set the minds of archaeologists spinning. It is a 5.5-inch high clay vessel with a copper cylinder inside and an oxidized iron rod suspended within the cylinder, not touching the sides, and the 2 entrances are closed off by asphalt plugs. It is suspected that this makeshift battery served as a way of electroplating gold onto silver, only needing to be filled with some kind of acid like wine or vinegar in order to work. Today, some researchers believe that it was actually just a storage container, but that's not true. Come on. But replicas created by American electrical researcher Willard Gray after World War II actually produced around 2 volts of electricity. I love discoveries like this because it tells us just how ahead of the game we were and gave a delicious dose of foreshadowing at where we are heading as a civilization.
And one of the older items that was found is in our number 5 spot today, which is the walking stick. Now this item also is not as old as some of the throwing darts that were found, but it's so unique and cool that I had to put it on the list. It's not just any old walking stick. It's a walking stick with runic inscription. Whoa, so cool. I actually have rocks with ruins on them at home that I bought from like a new agey store, and I love to look at them. Ruins are truly fascinating and quite beautiful, so I'm a big believer in symbology and the energy and power infused in symbols. So anyways, when I saw this recovered walking stick from the 11th century AD, I kind of freaked out and needed to share. In our number 4 spot, we have arrowheads. This is actually so cool. The entire video has been so fun to research, but finding this out was very interesting. I definitely need to go to museums more. I don't think I knew that I enjoyed history so much. Anyways, in 2003, a hiker was walking in a mountain pass near Sion, Switzerland, when he came across some treasures. Not gold, sadly, but what he found were items that are arguably way cooler from a Stone Age hunter from over 3,000 years ago. They were fragments of a bow, an arrow case, arrowheads, and leg coverings, all believed to be revealed due to the ice in the glaciers melting due to the rapidly changing climate. Pretty crazy. Imagine just going for a hike and discovering some ancient artifacts. I bet you there will never be a more interesting moment in your life. Although fine, the birth of your future child could be fairly special too. In our number 3 spot, we have the Viking whisks. Technically not considered ancient artifacts, but I thought this was cool and it needed an honorable mention. The melting of glaciers in Norway has actually revealed a lost mountain pass, and with it, hundreds of Viking artifacts have been discovered. The pass was discovered back in 2011, as ever since, the glaciers have continued to melt and more artifacts have been recovered. The archaeologists believe the pass was used from the Roman Iron Age 300 AD to the Viking Age 1000 AD. From horseshoes to sled fragments to wooden needles to wooden whisks, all kinds of artifacts have been recovered. One of the most unique items include a Viking mitten and a blue textile rug. Wow, imagine finding a rug frozen on a mountain. Also, it's just wild to think that the Vikings had rugs. All I can think of when I think of Vikings is war, so it's probably just me and my limited imagination due to my limited knowledge of history. In our number 2 spot, we have arrowheads. Over 100,000 artifacts were recently uncovered in a place called Anomalous in Alaska. These artifacts belong to the Yupik peoples who lived there. There have been stories told over many centuries of a gruesome massacre that occurred during the bow and arrow war days, which was a series of long, brutal battles. Up until recently, the area had been frozen in the subsoil known as permafrost. The most notable items that were found were the slate arrow points that further proved the stories that have been told about these war times. Although these items aren't technically ancient, they are truly a wonder for archaeologists to discover, and I thought it needed to be on this list. In our number 1 spot, we have an ancient lunchbox. A 3,500-year-old lunchbox was discovered in Switzerland in the Swiss Alps. No, it didn't have a 3,500-year-old cheese sandwich in it, but it did have traces of ancient cereal. Whoa, some ancient dude was just walking around the Alps eating an ancient version of Lucky Charms. The lunchbox is a Bronze Age wooden container, and apparently the food traces were of wheat and barley or rye grains. The lunchbox was made from Swiss pine, and its rim was made from willow, sewn together with European larch twigs. It was found in a melting ice patch in 2012. That's incredible. Probably my fave find on this list, but anything to do with food just makes me excited. Excuse me as I go pour myself a bowl of Lucky Charms. feel free to join me if you like.
Coming in number 10, we have the Antikythera mechanism. Mapping out the stars is something that many civilizations have done throughout history. I mean, it's pretty hard not to be blown away by what is floating around above you in this massive net of lights and endless void of blackness, but it was more than this. The stars could be used to map out directions so you could know where you're going in the dead of night when the sun wasn't being kind enough to show you which direction you needed to head in. The Antikythera mechanism was maybe the most advanced form of mapping out the stars we have ever seen from ancient civilizations. There's a series of gears and systems almost like a massive clock. It has two sides that were most likely used for mapping out different things. But the wild thing about this archaeological find is that to this day we don't know exactly what it was used for. The thing is just too complex. I wonder what type of thing that we have today that no one will be able to find out what it was used for in the future. Is it going to be Heelys or something? Like, why did they want wheels on their shoes? Was it for speed? Was it for fashion? Turns out it's for both, baby. Gotta go fast, gotta look good. If that isn't a slogan already, it should be. Coming in at number 9, we have the Pires Res map. I think one of the coolest and worst jobs you could have had back in the day would have been an explorer. I mean, you could go and find a new land and literally become famous because of your discoveries. You could get knighted and everyone in the world would want to hear your stories about traveling across the globe to see some of the most exotic things the world has to offer. But at the same time, you would have to spend months at a time on a boat with only dudes, and then you might end up in a place that is so insanely cold you lose some of your fingers and toes. Or you could be in a jungly area that has a tiger that is trying to kill you and you have literally never seen a tiger before in your life. But for Pires Res, things seemed to work out alright. The dude was from Hungary, and it seemed that he had such a great understanding of the world that people thought he could have come from the future. The dude had a map that broke down the location of Antarctica 200 years before it was officially discovered and disclosed to the world. This means that this man had a better understanding of the world than anyone around him. There's also the fact that he mapped out missing continents that have disappeared. I would love a new continent. I really just want a new culture of people so I can try a new food that I didn't even know existed. It's the main reason I want aliens to be real, so they can come here and give me food. Coming in at number 8, we have the Hindu bell. Answer this question. How did an old brass bell that looks like it has some carvings in it that look like a Hindu god end up in a mine in West Virginia encased in a lump of coal that was 300 million years old? Huh? How? You tell me how. I don't know how. Was it because the future people came back to leave a bell for some other people? Did some people cross the Atlantic way before we think? Or was the whole thing a hoax? Well, I don't know, dude. Let me know in the comments what you think. Coming in at number 7, we have the Dendera lights. There might have been light bulbs that were discovered in ancient Egypt. Yeah, everyone likes to jump on the bandwagon of Thomas Edison when we talk about the person who brought light to homes. But he really was just a con man who had an eye for a good patent and killed a prisoner in one of the most brutal executions ever because his ego was too big to let Nikola Tesla have the better version of technology. But when we start to flow back through time, we find that the Egyptians used to worship something called the Dendera lights. It would seem that hieroglyphs in the Hafar temple would show that the Egyptians used to be able to harness the power of glowing lights, and they might have used it to party. How could they have done something like this? Well, no one knows, and the markings might have just been art, but it could have been tech that was brought to them from the future. It might have been alien tech since ancient Egyptians are always associated with aliens. Coming in.
Number 5, the unlucky mummy. Right off the bat, the unlucky mummy isn't an actual mummy per se. It's rather the lid of a coffin that once belonged to a high status woman who lived sometime around 950 BCE. So a little old, little time ago. The mummy board wasn't seen again until the early 1800s AD. It was found in Thebes. 4 Englishmen found it, and of course they were celebrating this ancient piece of history, but it didn't take long for all 4 of those men to pass away from mysterious circumstances. If you're looking for more top 10s on ancient history, come meet me over on our top 10 history channel. It's called Bumblebee. We do top 10s only on historical stuff. Ancient eras, mummies, silly Victorian era hats, cool shoes, I don't know, you name it. It's all over at Bumblebee. See you there. Number 4. Mandy the Haunted Doll. Mandy lives in the Quesnel Museum in Canada. Awesome, nice and close to home. The staff of the museum insists that Mandy is kept in a separate display case all by herself, because when she's with other dolls, she would end up knocking them over somehow, some way. Staff also reported that their lunches would disappear and that photos of the doll would end up glitching out. The lunches disappearing, that's for sure one dude who's blaming ghosts. That's actually not a bad plan. I'm okay with that. But the photos, that's terrifying. That's a surefire sign that it's haunted. Number 3. The Great Bed of Ware. We figured we'd get nice and cozy for this next one. For starters, it's massive, and it's cozy. It looks like the bed a king would certainly sleep in, and rightfully so. The Great Bed of Ware was built for the royal family back in 1463. It was 12 feet by 12 feet. Jonas Fosbrook, a carpenter from that time, they impressed King Edward IV so much with their work that the king gave them a pension for the rest of their life. People would travel all across the land to see this bed. That's a fun family vacation. Yeah, we're gonna go see a bed. Yeah, Disneyland's closed today. Let's go see this bed. Shakespeare mentioned this bed in his play The Twelfth Night, okay? This is a big deal. All those who stayed in the bed though, they did not have a good night's rest. No, instead they woke up to scratches and bruises, or they would wake up just on the floor. Yeah, somehow they would roll out of a 12-foot bed. Today it can be found in the Victoria and Albert Museum in case you wanna go in there and take a nap. Would you stay the night in this old haunted, dirty, and probably very uncomfortable bed? Sound off below, I definitely wouldn't. Number 2. The Baker's Wedding Dress. Back in 1849 in the small town of Altoona, Pennsylvania, Elias Baker and his wife Hetty lived in the Baker mansion. They had 2 sons and 1 daughter named Anna Baker. Anna had fallen in love with one of her father's employees. Nice. Another steel worker, but her father wouldn't allow the relationship to take off. So Anna vowed to never marry again ever. She locked herself in her room for the time being. And when her father passed away in 1848, she went to find her true love again, but he had since moved on and settled down. Yeah, worst case scenario. So she spent the rest of her days behaving erratically, and her soul apparently still haunts that same wedding dress today. Not just the dress, also the mansion is apparently haunted as well. Guests would report furniture moving around. What's with ghosts and moving furniture? Where were these guys when I was moving? And finally, number 1, the Bassano vase. This vase comes from the 15th century. It made for an excellent wedding gift, of course, in Italy one day, but the night before, the big day, bride sadly lost her life with the vase still in her possession. So the family kept it afterwards, of course, but as the vase was passed down the family line, the pattern began to unveil itself. It was kind of hard to ignore. Whomever held possession of the Bassano vase died shortly after in some way, shape, or form. Now keep in mind, this was the 15th century, so the average lifespan was 30 to 40 years old on a good day. But after many deaths in the family, it was packed away for good, just to be safe, or so they thought. The vase showed up again in 1988 alongside a note. The note was pretty to the point. It said, "Beware, this vase brings death." End of note. Pretty simple, I like it. Whoever found it was probably like, huh, okay, and then continued on with it. And then it was auctioned for over $2,000 sans note. Weird, they left the note out of that, that's odd. The pharmacist who won the auction, well, you guessed it, passed away within months.
Coming in at number 8, we have the US Delta II rocket. Back in January of 1997, a woman named Lottie Williams was out minding her own business on a nice little walk. To her surprise, she was greeted by a streak of light in the sky. All of a sudden, she felt something brush her shoulder. Turns out that this thing that brushed her was part of a US Delta II rocket. The rocket was launched in 1996. A year later, it came crashing down in pieces. Lottie said when she felt something brush by, she turned around and saw something on the ground. It was a small piece of burnt mesh. Now she is extremely lucky because had it been a bigger piece, it probably would have knocked her down and killed her. Here's the thing, analysis shows that it's most likely part of the Delta II rocket. Most likely, still not 100% confirmed. For all we know, that could be a piece from an alien spacecraft. Moving on to number 6, we have the Russian tank. In March of 2011, a man was out hiking in northwestern Colorado when he came across something strange. The object was round and warm to touch. It was also in a crater, meaning whatever this was had just crashed down from space. The hiker then called military aerospace officials. Later, it was revealed that this weird object was the tank from a Russian Zenit 3 rocket. The rocket was launched in January. 2 months later, it came crashing back down. Fun fact, it's one of only a handful of space debris to be found in the US. But seriously, imagine being out for a walk and seeing something fly towards you from the sky. Like damn, that's another thing to worry about, being killed by space debris.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Roman Decahedron. Some sort of 3D octagon, and no one knows what they do. Like 0 people have been able to figure out what these things were for, and one of the weirdest parts about them is that we have found a lot of them. They seem to all come from the Roman era and were moved out to every territory that the Romans controlled. There are over 100 of these strange devices that have been found, and there are several guesses as to what they could do. Some people think they could have been some sort of status symbol. To have one in your home would have meant you were rich and in good graces graces with the Emperor of Rome. They might have just been decoration, or they could have been some sort of communication device from space, and it's how the Romans were able to be so powerful.
In our fourth spot, we have the Roswell rock. This rock is a very weird rock with a detailed design. The rock is uniform in color, unusually smooth, and has a design protruding from the surface of it. This rock was found in Roswell, New Mexico in 2004 by a man named Robert Ridge. He was a deer hunter. Apparently, he found this rock half sticking out of the ground and was shocked by its unusual and perfect design, as well as its strange magnetic properties. Upon analyzing it, people have realized that the rock's design actually matches a crop circle that was found in England in 1996, which makes this whole thing that much weirder. Now, some are convinced that this rock is some message sent by aliens. After experts have analyzed the design, they notice that it's a pattern of a sun and a moon inside of a circle. A woman named Linda Moulton Howe, who's an investigative journalist, believes that aliens are trying to teach us about astronomy with this rock, or that the rock contains a date for some event that has or will happen. It's pretty spooky. I just wish we knew more about this weird rock.
Coming in number 3, we have fungus. When you look at all the living beings on this planet, why has fungus got its own spot? I mean, those things are just plants, right? Wrong. Fungus are some of the most advanced life forms on the planet. They have functionality that spreads in extreme diversity from species to species. Some of them have the ability to mind control a host and then kill it so it spreads spores. Others have advanced communication techniques that allow them to find the most direct routes to one another. Because of this, there's speculation that fungus might have come here by aliens or might have touched down on Earth via meteor.
And at number 2, we have the Betts Mystery Sphere. On March 27, 1974, the Betts family were out examining a small bushfire near their property. While doing so, the family came across a completely smooth metal sphere. It was about the size of a bowling ball. On this sphere, there was a triangle engraved in it. They took it home only to find that it had strange properties. One day when their son was playing his guitar in the same room as this sphere, it started to emit a throbbing sound from it. The sound was strong enough to hurt the family's dog's ears. This sphere can also change directions, so if you push it across the floor, it will roll forward and then stop and then roll back all on its own. It's also said to be able to absorb power from solar energy. It's said to be more active when exposed to the sun. Now, they refused to let anyone analyze it until they linked the sphere to paranormal activity that was happening around the house. Like doors would slam by themselves and they would hear this weird organ music. Now, scientists have analyzed it and they said it was just a normal sphere. How late? But the family is convinced that something is controlling it. Maybe something of the extraterrestrial nature. Seriously, where did this sphere come from and what's the deal with its weird properties? Seems like it came from space.
And coming at the number 1 spot, we have alien coins. So who do we always see plastered on coins? Well, it's our most rich and famous people, the ones that define our culture at the time, or the rulers that control the area, and if you don't put their face on the money, they will for sure cut your head off. Well, then there's a bunch of questions as to why some alien coins were found in Egypt. There was a massive renovation done on some homes in Egypt, which dug up one of the strangest artifacts to date. There were a series of coins that were found that had not a queen's head on them or a pharaoh, but an alien dude, like the one that looks like he's pulled right out of the movies, like the green dude with the big head and the green skin, you know, all that stuff going on. You guys know what I'm talking about. But this dude had like a toga on, so he kind of looked a little bit boss. There were also several coins that were found that seemed to have spaceships on them. If the ruler theory is right, there could have been an alien ruler who came down from the stars in ancient Egypt, someone who maybe crash landed and needed to get his ship fixed, and while he was waiting for his repairs to be done, he was worshipped like a god.
This list in our number 10 spot, we have the RMS Republic. In 1981, researchers were on a dive when they came across the wreck of the RMS Republic. This ship was built in 1903 and it ended up being lost at sea in 1909. Since 1909, there were plenty of rumors that began swirling that said the ship may have been carrying a whole bunch of treasure. Like treasure that could perhaps be worth billions of dollars. One of the rumors was that the ship was carrying US gold coins that would have been worth a minimum of $250,000, but there's an even crazier rumor that the ship was carrying $3 million in coins, as it was supposed to be a loan to Russia. Either way, this treasure has actually never been found, as it certainly wasn't with the ship when the researchers came across it. Do you guys think that there was never any treasure, or do you think that someone else found it first? In our number 9 spot today, we have this ancient battle gear. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far, because it really helps us out. These artifacts were actually found recently after a dive in 2013. Just off the coast of Sicily, archaeologists located what they believe may have been the site of the first naval battle. They found armor, weapons, helmets, and battering rams, and they were even able to date them back to around 2,000 years ago, which is so unbelievable. They believe that these artifacts are the remains of the Battle of the Agadi Islands. This was when the Romans battled against the Carthaginians for over 20 years. It is believed that around 50 ships were sunk in this time, and that is how these remains ended up there for 2 millenniums. I don't know about you guys, but it's honestly crazy to think about that stuff still being around. In our number 8 spot today, we have Dwarka. There was a time when the city of Dwarka was considered to be just a myth, so it came as quite a shock when researchers found the lost city 120 feet under the water. Testing done on the city remains has dated them back to 9,500 years ago, which could possibly place it even before the start of Egyptian and Chinese civilizations. This lost city consisted of 6 sectors that were each divided into residential and commercial areas. Apparently, the Great Flood that happened 9,000 years ago is the cause for the city to end up submerged in the ocean. It's crazy that we can look back 9,000 years ago and know things like that. The name Dwarka translates from Sanskrit to mean gateway to heaven. With the city, researchers also found construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even human bones and teeth. The city had many royal palaces that were all made with crystal and silver and had emeralds as decorations. In our number 7 spot today, we have ancient medicine. Just off the coast of Tuscany, in 2013, researchers found the Relito del Pizzino, which was a shipping vessel that they were able to date back 2,000 years ago. Among the remains of the ship, they found some items that would help give them insights into what life was like for ancient Romans, and one of the most interesting items was ancient medicinal pills. Researchers believe that these pills were used as an eye medication. They contained zinc compounds, starch, iron oxide, beeswax, and some plant-based materials. This really helped give us more insights into what was considered medicine all the way back then, but I feel like there are many things we still don't know for sure.
Number 10, the Ark of the Covenant. If you've seen Indiana Jones, then you're probably familiar with the relic that is known as the Ark of the Covenant. According to the Hebrew Bible, God told Moses to create the Ark of the Covenant in order to store the original tablets on which were written the original 10 Commandments. They did so, making it out of acacia wood and covering it in gold. Around 3,000 years ago, the first temple was built in Jerusalem and the Ark was stored within it until 587 BC when the temple was destroyed. After that, it's not known where the Ark is or what happened to it. Some people saying that it was hidden before the temple was destroyed, while one legend claims that the Ark will not be revealed until the coming of the Messiah, son of David. Some people believe that the Ark was taken to Ethiopia and is stored within a church there, but one scholar said that he had seen this alleged Ark back in World War II and that it's not the original. The Ark of the Covenant is said to have incredible powers such as instant death if you were to touch it, so if it did come back, who knows what it would be used for. Number 9, Noah's Ark. A very famous story from the Bible tells the tale of Noah, who built a massive boat to hold 2 of every animal to save them from a massive flooding of the earth. The flood took place because God believed that man was becoming too wicked, so he picked the person he believed most righteous, Noah, to survive on the ship with his family and the animals in order to repopulate the planet afterwards. After the 150 days of flooding, the Ark apparently came to rest on top of the mountains of Ararat. This mountain does actually exist in eastern Turkey, though I think we would have noticed by now if there was a giant boat sitting up there. Many explorers have gone in search of the Ark but have yielded no results, most people these days believing that it was just a mythical story and never actually happened. In order to house that many animals, Noah's Ark would have needed to be absolutely massive, so if the boat is out there somewhere, it's probably just small pieces of it. Number 8, the real cross. Across the globe, there are hundreds of pieces of wood that people claim to have come from the original cross that Jesus was crucified on. However, it's unlikely that any of these 2x4s actually came from the cross. During the Middle Ages, religious relics were incredibly popular, and supposed pieces of the cross were popping up all over the place, more than could make any sense. Theologian John Calvin famously said that if all these alleged pieces of the cross were gathered together, they would fill the cargo hold of an entire ship. These fake relics aren't just a thing of the past though, and are still incredibly popular today. One relic seller on eBay was reported to have sold many pieces of the cross for around $500 a pop. Right now, there is no piece of the cross that all scholars can agree is authentic, and it's likely that a true remnant will never actually be found, this being because it would have been made of wood and would have decomposed a long time ago. Number 7. The Copper Scroll. The Dead Sea Scrolls were a series of religious manuscripts that were discovered in the mid-1900s in, you guessed it, the Dead Sea. One of the most unusual of these scrolls is known as the Copper Scroll, it getting this name because it is, of course, inscribed in copper. The text on the scroll describes the hiding places of vast quantities of treasure, including up to 65 metric tons of gold and silver objects. Unfortunately, we haven't actually been able to find any of these treasures, and that's because the hiding places described on the scroll are incredibly cryptic, it not being your typical X marks the spot buried treasure map. They describe the treasure as being hidden in places like in the Great Cistern, which is in the courtyard of the Little Colonnade, and in the eastward looking cave of the Pillar with 2 entrances. Yeah, definitely pretty vague. Whether or not these treasures actually exist is also up for debate. Some people saying they were real and captured by the Romans, and some people saying that they were just totally made up.
In our 6th spot, we have the UFO tooth wheel. This is another artifact that is said to have come from aliens in space. So basically, back in the day, a Russian man was using coal to heat his home when he saw something sticking out of a piece of coal. He reported his findings, and researchers said it looked like a tooth wheel to some device. After tests were run on it, it was discovered that it was composed of 98% aluminum and 2% magnesium. Now remember what I said before? Humans discovered how to first make aluminum in 1825. But the piece of coal this artifact was found in was 300 million years old. So how is that even possible? In fact, the tooth wheel resembles parts that we currently use in microscopes and electronic devices. Again, back in the day, they didn't have any of those devices, so what the heck. Scientists are still running tests on this object to one day figure out who created it and figure out what its original purpose was. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the iron beads. Back in the day, it was found that ancient Egyptians created iron beads. They were carefully hammered into thin sheets, and then they would roll these into tubes. Then they would string them together and make a necklace. While studying them, they found the necklaces were over 5,000 years old. It was also revealed that the beads were made out of pieces from meteorites, and then they would hammer that down. Not only that, but it was revealed that the Egyptians had a more advanced understanding of metalsmithing than we originally thought. Moving on to number 4, we have the valuable meteorite. There's a meteorite out there that is more valuable than gold. It was April 23rd, 2019, and a weird colorful orb flew across the skies of Costa Rica. It was orange and green in color. This object was about the size of a washing machine. And then, just like that, it broke up into pieces that got scattered between 2 villages. One of the pieces was discovered by a woman named Marcia Campos Munoz. She heard the rumble and saw something crash down on her property. She was one of the few people to find a piece of this meteorite. Now, meteorites show up all the time on Earth, so what's so special about this one? Well, it turns out they belong to a rare class called carbonaceous chondrites. They formed when the solar system was still developing. It's believed that these pieces of meteorites will help us figure out what early solar system life was like. Coming in at number 2, we have the alien spacecraft. In 2017, a Hawaiian man with a telescope spotted this weird object leaving the solar system. This object was named Oumuamua, and it's considered the first known interstellar object detected passing through the solar system. Here's the thing. Many people believe that this thing is an alien spacecraft. Let me explain. This thing looks like a space rock, but it's not a comet or asteroid. It's too small and oddly shaped to be an asteroid. The thing is long and shaped like a rocket. No asteroids that we know of are shaped like that. Not only that, but astronomers thought the first space rock to enter our solar system would be a ball of ice and rocks. A comet. But usually there's a cloud of dust and gas surrounding comets, and this object doesn't have that. So then what on earth is it? On top of that, it's said to emit blue colors from it. As a result, rumor has it that it's actually an alien spacecraft. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Hypatia stone. In 2013, a weird stone made its way to Earth from space. This stone has managed to leave scientists baffled. They claim it's unlike any other extraterrestrial rock ever found. In 2015, while analyzing the stone, they found it was not part of a meteorite or comet. So they were puzzled as to where it came from. Researcher Jan Kramer said, and I quote, "The stone's matrix contains a high amount of very specific carbon compounds, called polyaromatic hydrocarbons, or PAH, a major component of interstellar dust, which existed even before our solar system was formed." Meaning, this stone is super old. Like, it was around before the sun and planets had formed. It's mind-blowing, and they still haven't found out all about it. Starting off this countdown, we have King Tut's dagger. Upon excavating the tomb of King Tut in 1925, scientists discovered a long 34-centimeter dagger wrapped up with King Tut. Now, back then there was no way for them to do studies on the dagger without damaging it. However, an X-ray done in 1970 showed that the dagger was made of some interesting compounds, primarily nickel and iron. Back then, iron was considered very rare. And how could it have been composed of iron when his burial predated Egypt's Iron Age by nearly 2,000 years? So right there, that's a little shocking. As a result of the iron and nickel composition, scientists have declared it was made from extraterrestrial metal. Now, there are 2 theories here. One is that a meteorite crashed down and then they used that to make the dagger. Theory 2 is that the dagger was made by aliens and dropped or left by them accidentally. I mean, some honestly do think that the ancient Egyptians were in contact with aliens. If that's the case, then the dagger might have originally been from the ETs.
And at number 6, we have the underwater pyramid. There has been so much footage of strange things flying around in the air that it shocks me that we haven't been introduced to even one alien yet. Honestly, I hope that it happens in my lifetime, because this pandemic has just been such a drag. We need something to spice things up. But maybe we haven't been able to run into any space dudes because they have all been underwater. There are some people who think that all the aliens who come to visit come to a secret underwater base, and that's why we don't see them. And this pyramid that was found in Yonaguni, Japan might be hints to this. Now, at first glance, the people who came to look at it said that it's just a normal rock formation, nothing special about it. But then some people said that they found a massive knife down there, and then some other people said that knife was a fake and had nothing to do with a massive underwater pyramid. Then some people stated that there was art carved into the side of this pyramid, which hasn't been disproven yet. Okay, but it still could be. There are theories floating around that this could be connected to Atlantis, or that it could be a hotspot for alien visitors who brought some tech from the future to make a home base just outside of Japan. Coming in at number 5, we have the Nazca Lines. Oh, don't think that we're off the idea of aliens coming to Earth just yet. I mean, we're doing a list of artifacts from the future. There's going to be a lot of alien talk on this one. The Nazca Lines might be one of the oldest and strangest discoveries in the area. They went unnoticed for thousands of years until the 1930s. This is mainly because you can only see them from the sky. They are massive lines that are seen running through the ground. They are made in a pretty primitive way by just moving the Earth, which is traditionally red to showcase the white Earth underneath. Now, that doesn't seem like it came from the future at all. Well, this is where the future thing comes in. These lines were made over 2,000 years ago, and the question is, why did they make them? Some people think that this could have been a way to communicate with aliens or beings from the future. Other people think that this could have just been rituals to send a message to a god in order to have a good year of crops. Mind you, those gods might have been aliens from the future. Next on the list, we have the archaeological axe. I mean, this is really just an axe. What's so special about it? I could go buy an axe right now and it would do the same thing that it did thousands of years ago. It would chop. Well, unless you have a TikTok that's dedicated to chopping wood, then the axe is used to chop wood and rev a woman's libido. But what has put this axe on this list is the fact that it was made over 4,000 years ago and has a ton of strange markings in it all over it, and no one has been able to decipher them. There are 15 different symbols on it, which is very strange for this kind of tool. It would have just been used to chop wood. Why did someone put so much work into making it look nice? There's also the fact that the axe is very advanced for its era. Maybe the person who made it had knowledge from the future, or maybe they were just the best axe maker of their time and decided to deck out their axe with a bunch of cool drawings. Like, you know, if you're making a table for yourself today, you make the thing custom and cool as hell. Next, we have the lunar tacked disc. How did the Vikings become one of the most dominant warriors of their time? Was it weaponry? Was it the lack of empathy? Was it the way they would dress? Well, it might have been all of those things combined with the lunar tacked disc. This thing was basically the most advanced compass of its day. The thing could tell the Vikings how to cross vast oceans, which was a key part in how they were able to be such a dominant force. They would be able to venture far away from their homes and then pull up on some people and just start hacking and slashing. They could cut everyone's head off and really go to town on the whole area. They would take some prisoners, they would burn things to the ground. You didn't want to be on the receiving end of a Viking axe. But the way they were able to make these long ocean voyages without the fear of getting lost was through the lunar tacked disc. This thing was the most advanced compass of its day, and it could even work at night. This thing was able to somehow cast light onto the compass that would be similar to using a sundial during the day. Apparently it used magic crystals. These crystals might have come from the future. We have no idea really how they worked because we've never found one. Next on the list, we have the Baghdad battery. When was the first battery ever made? When did we figure out how to lock down the power of electricity and put it into a little area so that it could be used for Xbox controllers? Do those things still take batteries, or do they have rechargeable batteries now? For how long have we been seeing people control the power of lightning in a Duracell? Well, it turns out that we might have been able to do this for longer than you think. The Baghdad battery was discovered back in 1938, and trust me, it was turning some heads. It had a copper rod inside of it, and what some people are saying is electroplating. If this is true, that means that people back then were able to harness some juice into a clay pot. If this is possible, that means I could set up some clay pots in my home and charge my phone like that. I could get off the grid with a little bit of clay and copper. I like the sound of that. All right, next on the list, guys, we have the London Hammer. Okay, this is for sure the craziest one. Mind you, I know nothing about geology, so this might be normal, but the internet seems to think that this is a big deal, and who am I to deny them? The London Hammer seems to be a regular relic, some old hammer that a blacksmith probably used to make some tools and weapons. I mean, there is really nothing cool about that, and it definitely didn't come from the future, but then you find out that the hammer was found in some limestone that is 400 million years old. What does that mean? I don't really know. Does limestone that old just hang around and anything can get stuck in it? Or is it something that can only happen if the hammer got launched into it at the time? I have no clue, man, but some people seem to think that something spectacular happened here because people are constantly talking about how this is completely unexplained.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Dropa stones. In 1938, archaeologist Dr. Chipute led an expedition near the Bayan Har Mountains in China. That's when they came across some interesting caves. These caves held evidence that ancient life once lived in them. After searching the caves, they found weird discs buried under thick layers of dust. These discs resembled phonograph records. Researchers dated them to be over 10,000 years old. Now, they didn't play music like a typical record, but instead they had hieroglyphics carved into them. When studied, it told a story about a spaceship that crashed into the mountains. Aboard the spaceship were people that called themselves the Dropa. Then later on, the discs were sent to Moscow for further studying. That's when they were placed on this special turntable, and the discs would vibrate or hum in a weird rhythm, as if an electric charge was passing through them. After that, research on the discs stopped. Or some believe research continued and they found/contacted alien life, which they just didn't tell the public. Either way, this is said to be one of the most mysterious artifacts in the world. In our 9th spot, we have the alien. And guys, here's just your little friendly reminder to hit that thumbs up button. In 2017, a man in Cusco made a pretty terrifying discovery in the southern desert of Peru. The artifact he found looks exactly like a tiny mummified alien head. An X-ray concluded that the skull had very alien-type features. The skull had angled eyelids with shallow eye sockets. pockets, 2 nostrils, and a narrow slit-type mouth. Now, whoever was in possession of the skull actually covered it in a type of clay, so that's what you see on the top of it, which makes it appear to look more like an alien. Researchers discovered that it is indeed a real skull, but they don't know what it belonged to. So it may just be that this skull belonged to a real-life alien from space. Moving on to number 8, we have the Wedge of Aiud. Back in 1974, construction workers in Romania were working in a village in Aiud when they came across some pretty weird objects. These objects were buried 30 feet in the sand by a river. 2 of the objects were bones from mastodons, which are very distant relatives of an elephant. I mean, that's cool and all, but the thing that really caught their attention was this mysterious wedged-shaped object that was located by the bones. This object contained 89% aluminum, 6% copper, and a total of 12 elements altogether. Here's the thing. Aluminum was discovered around 1825, yet this wedge lay next to bones that are from 11,000 years ago. The timeline just doesn't add up. The wedge itself is theorized to be around 10,000 years old. People believe that this object couldn't have existed way back then. An aeronautical engineer stated that this object looks exactly like a piece of a landing gear for landing aircrafts. This has left researchers to believe that aliens crashed their craft from space maybe 11,000 years ago. In our 7th spot, we have the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is a piece of a stone slab found in 1799. It has a message carved into it written in 3 different types of scripts. You got ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, Demotic scripts, and ancient Greek. This stone is the key to decipher Egyptian scripts. In 1814, British scientist Thomas Young started studying the stone and made some progress on cracking it. But it wasn't until 1822 to 1824 that the hieroglyphic code was finally cracked. This was done by French linguist Jean-François Champollion. It's hypothesized that the slab was created in Egypt in 196 BC, but we still don't know who created it. Now, this one is more of a conspiracy, but it's actually thought that the Rosetta Stone was made by aliens, and they delivered it to us from space. Obviously, there's no solid evidence to support this. In fact, archaeologist Paul Wasson believes the Rosetta Stone has lessons to teach us about creating a message that will allow us to communicate with aliens. Because you know, we can't just assume that aliens speak English.
In our number 5 spot today, we have Gondwana. This one is hard to think of as an artifact, but I most definitely think it applies for today's list. In 2011, National Geographic published an article where they said that pieces of Gondwana may have been discovered deep in the Indian Ocean. Gondwana is the ancient continent that used to exist when Australia, India, and Antarctica were all one landmass. Apparently, they found the presence of granite and sandstone, which is unusual to find on the seabed, and is much more common to continents. There isn't a ton that is known about these microcontinents, but it truly is very mysterious and very fascinating. Since these pieces were from a time when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, they have even found fossils. In our number 4 spot today, we have these Stone Age artifacts. Swedish divers found artifacts that they believe may have been the remnants of Swedish people all the way back from the Stone Age. These artifacts were found in the Baltic Sea and are believed to be 11,000 years old. They were found 16 meters below the water, and their findings consisted of animal horns, flint tools, wood, and ropes. It's crazy that researchers have the ability to date these kinds of things as far back as they have with these ones. Apparently, they were also pretty well preserved when found, which is a whole other mystery to me. It may seem like a small find, but every artifact can help give us insight to what life on Earth was like all those years ago. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Bronze Age sewn boat. 2014 saw quite an interesting archaeological discovery when the researcher Gilia Boeto revealed that they had discovered a Bronze Age sewn boat. This boat was found in a cove in Croatia and has been dated to have been wrecked in 1200 BC, which is unbelievable. The boat is made out of wood that is sewn together by ropes, roots, and willow branches. It is 7 meters long and 2.5 meters high, and considering the fact that it is 3,200 years old, it certainly has held up remarkably. This boat has given us at least a small glimpse into how boats were made all the way back then. Sometimes I hear about things that really leave me in awe of the things that have gone on our Earth. It's so unbelievably cool to think about. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Yonaguni Monument. Who would have thought that hammerhead sharks could lead to the discovery of an ancient artifact? Well, not exactly, but in the sea just off of Yonaguni in Japan, there is a diving location that has a high population of hammerhead sharks, making it a large and popular attraction. In 1986, a diver in the area noticed some formation on the seabed that resembled a structure of some sort. This led to a team of scientists going on a dive to gather more information, and this is when the Yonaguni Monument was officially discovered. The monument is made out of sandstone and mudstone, but here's the mysterious thing. Scientists can't agree on its origins. There are some who believe that this is a natural formation, but there are some who swear that it is man-made. There are pretty reasonable arguments for both sides, and considering the fact that this thing is at least 10,000 years old, I guess it's fair to say that we may not have all the answers. In our number 1 spot today, we have Stardust. You guys, I truly don't even know what to make of this one. So apparently, 2.7 million years ago, a star exploded, and German researchers have now been able to locate pieces of it while they were drilling in the Pacific Ocean. I can't even believe that is a sentence that is true. This star was a Type 2 supernova, which means that the star had to have at least 8 times the mass of the Sun, and it also ejects iron-60 during the explosion. Somehow the star fragments ended up in the Pacific Ocean to be discovered in the remains of magnetic bacteria that were feasting on the iron from the star. Scientists believe it happened all that time ago because apparently iron-60 is way too young for Earth, whatever that means. Science is so crazy sometimes, you guys.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Kosu artifact. In 1963, 3 rock hunters were exploring the mountains of eastern California with hopes to find geodes to sell at their gift shop. They gathered a bunch of them and took them home, where they proceeded to cut them in half. However, one of the geodes practically broke their new crystal saw in half when trying to cut it open. Instead of finding crystals, they actually discovered something more intriguing. Inside the rock mass was a perfectly circular porcelain-like section. In the center of the section was a tiny magnetic pin. An X-ray of the rock revealed that there was also a spring or helix at one of the ends. From there, people realized that it resembles a modern-day spark plug. However, it is theorized that this rock is around 500,000 years old. But spark plugs were not invented until the 19th century. So this has left people thinking that it's proof of alien visitors, saying that it came from their spacecraft. Meaning, they're way more clever than we realized, since they created this technology thousands of years before we did. Others believe that it was left behind by time travelers. Then you have the skeptics that have tried to debunk it by saying it simply was just a spark plug from the 1920s and then someone threw it out, so it's just a piece of someone's trash that we're all hyping up. But honestly, you choose what you want to believe. In our 9th spot, we have the Roswell Rock. The Roswell Rock, as featured in a couple of episodes of the show Ancient Aliens, is a very weird rock with a detailed design. The rock is uniform in color, unusually smooth, and has a design protruding from the surface of it. This rock was found in Roswell, New Mexico in 2004. A man named Robert Ridge, a deer hunter, apparently found this rock half sticking out of the ground. He also discovered that it had strange magnetic properties. Upon analyzing it, people have realized that the rock's design exactly matches a crop circle that was found in England in 1996. Some people believe that it's just a man-made copy of the crop circles. Other people believe that it conveys some sort of message from aliens. After experts have analyzed the design, they noticed that it's a pattern of a sun and a moon inside a circle. Linda Moulton Howe, an investigative journalist, believes that the sun, moon, and skies are present throughout the solar system and all the galaxies, meaning maybe aliens are trying to teach us about astronomy. Or the rock contains some sort of date for some event that has happened or will happen. Making our way down the list at number 8, we have the ancient airplane. Researchers have noticed that the Incas left behind some very interesting objects. One of the more notable ones are the figures that are small and golden that closely resemble modern jet planes. Upon analyzing them, people have noticed that the figures have what appears to be wings, a stabilizing tail, and landing gears. Ancient astronaut theorists believe that they are a figure of planes. But we know that planes were not created back then. This has led people to believe that they indeed were in contact with extraterrestrials that had advanced technology, whereas others think they're supposed to represent flying creatures like bees or fish. But again, it's for you to decide. Coming in at number 7, we have the alien head. Okay, this one, I can't lie, it's pretty weird. In 2017, a man in Cusco came forward with an artifact that he claims he found in the southern desert of Peru. This artifact appears to be a mummified life form, eerily resembling an alien. An X-ray concluded that the skull had angled eyelids with shallow eye sockets, 2 nostrils, and a narrow slit-type mouth. Under the skull, you can see exposed bone. Now, the skull is covered in a type of clay that gives the skull a more alien-type appearance. But it is discovered that it is a real skull. But it isn't concluded that if it's an alien skull or if it's just an animal skull that has been preserved and then morphed in appearance because of the clay coating. But what's weird is apparently there have been tons of skulls discovered in Peru. Lots of them have elongated skulls, which aliens are said to have. Maybe it's evidence that alien species were once inhabitants there. In our 6th spot, we have the alien hands. Okay, this is where it gets even weirder. In the same area where the skull was found, they found a hand with only 3 elongated fingers. It has nothing to do with the previously mentioned skull though. The skull is tiny, whereas the hand is larger than a human hand. So this hand type thing is said to be made of bone type material and some kind of skin. Just like the skull, the hand is also coated with clay. X-rays of this hand show that each finger has 6 bones. Human hands only have 3. Each of the fingers also contains something that is thought to be a fingernail, but we don't know exactly what creature this hand is from. Some thinks that it's from an animal, others are convinced that it indeed is an alien hand.
Number 6, the Q source. The Q source is the name of a hypothetical text that supposedly was used to help write the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke. Most historians believe that the Gospel of Mark was the earliest Christian gospel, and that it and the Q source were used to help the authors of the Gospel of Matthew and Luke write their texts. Archaeologists have so far been unable to find the Q source, leading some people to believe that instead of a written text, it was actually just an oral tradition that was passed down. While there are many copied copies of the famous Christian Gospels, scholars believe it's unlikely that a written Q source would have had many versions, which is what's making it so hard to find to this day. The contents of the Q source is apparently mostly Jesus' sayings, but I guess we'll never know for sure unless a written Q source is actually someday discovered. Number 5, the burial shroud. It's well known that after Jesus' crucifixion, he was buried within a cave, being sealed in behind a large stone. The part of the story that's up for debate is whether or not Jesus actually rose from the dead 3 days later, but we know for a fact he was a real guy who was actually buried in that cave. Mark 15:46 says, "Then Joseph bought a linen cloth, and taking down the body, wrapped it in the linen cloth, and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of the rock. He then rolled a stone against the door of the tomb." Many explorers and historians have gone in search of the linen cloth, or shroud, that Jesus was buried in. There have been numerous forgeries over the years, most famously the Shroud of Turin, which was actually created in the Middle Ages. What happened to the real shroud remains unknown to this day, and people say that it's unlikely we'll ever actually be able to find it. Number 4, the Ring of St. Edward. In the year 1005, St. Edward the Confessor was born into the royal family, and in 1042, he took the throne. He was viewed by the people as a deeply religious leader who did many good things, like removing unjust taxes, healing the sick, and taking a vow of chastity. He also built a cathedral that would come to be known as Westminster Abbey. St. Edward healed the sick using a sapphire ring that he had, and one day he was approached by a beggar who asked him for money. He didn't have any money on him, so he instead removed his ring and gave it to the beggar. Years later, pilgrims who were stranded in the Holy Land were rescued by St. John the Evangelist, who had the ring that Edward had given the beggar. He told the pilgrims to return to Edward and give him the ring, and to tell him that he would be dead in 6 months. And he was. The ring was kept in Westminster Abbey for many years, but it and many other relics went missing after the dissolution of the monastery. To this day, the ring has not been located, though it's believed that the sapphire from the ring is the center jewel on the imperial state crown. Number 3. The Veil of Veronica. The story of the Veil of Veronica was not recorded in its current form until the Middle Ages, and tells the story of a meeting between Saint Veronica and Jesus. She encountered Jesus along the Via Dolorosa and stopped to use her veil to wipe the blood and sweat from his brow. When she did so, Jesus' image became copied onto the veil. After that moment, it then apparently gained mythical powers, like quenching thirst, allowing the blind to see, and even raising people from the dead. There is written evidence that the veil was displayed in the 13th to 15th centuries, but after 1527, its fate is unknown. Some people believe that it was destroyed in Rome, or had even been stolen and made its way through taverns. After its disappearance, many copies started to pop up, despite the Pope prohibiting them from being made. In 1629, he then ordered that all copies of the veil be destroyed, and if you refused to give up your copy, you would be excommunicated from the church. Number 2. The Nephilim. In the Bible, the Nephilim were a group of incredibly large and strong beings who lived both before and after the flood, being described as being the offspring of fallen angels and human women. Many critics of the Bible laugh at its description of supposed giants, but if these creatures actually existed, it means that there are probably remains of them out there somewhere. Giant human skeletons that would squash any doubt that they had existed. Archaeological evidence from the ancient times does exist that could show the existence of giants, though it has never really been fully analyzed, as most people brush it off as not having been possible or real. There are other recordings and even art pieces that may also lend credit to the fact that these giants had once existed, and many people believe that the skeletal evidence is out there somewhere, just waiting to be discovered. Number 1. The Holy Grail. If you've seen Monty Python, then you're probably pretty familiar with this one. The Holy Grail, or the Holy Chalice, is the cup that Jesus apparently used during the Last Supper, which he had with his disciples before his crucifixion. The Bible says, "Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, 'Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins.'" It's unknown what happened to the Grail after this dinner, but there are a few medieval legends surrounding it. During the reign of King Arthur, many people believed that the cup had magical properties, and Arthur took his knights on a quest to try and find the Grail. Some people believe that Joseph of Arimathea, the man who had buried Jesus, had traveled to Britain and taken the cup with him. As some scholars think the Last Supper might have never even happened, we'll probably never be able to find the true Holy Grail.